longtime pal of mine, Reef buddy, Dominic, all the way from Australia. What area exactly in Australia? Just for the viewers.
Down south, so we're down in Victoria and Melbourne. So
Okay,
just out of town, so in a good little spot, nice green suburb. So no complaints from me.
very very cool. Yeah, I follow a lot of surfing. I think you knew that, but it's Snapper Rocks and a couple of these other
Yeah.
breaks are always good fun to watch. Anyway, we've got Dom with us from Australia. We're going to do a part two, everybody. I don't think anybody's live with us. We'll answer questions as we go along. And I guess without further ado, welcome, Dom. Thank you for your time, sir.
Thanks for
Always
having me
appreciate it.
again. It's always good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've seen that you're starting to add some corals and stuff like that, and I've been trying to keep like this revolving door going with any guests who've showed up, and it's like let's keep doing this. It might not be every month or every other month or something like that, but when we have time to sort of mix it up and catch up on each other's tanks and statuses and so forth. And I know last time we dove into your reef, and you were talking about your sort of your strategy of and you're definitely like a fish lover, so you sort of wanted to go that direction first. And it looks
Hmm.
like now you're kind of in the latter stages of your kind of your vision coming together. So I figured we would jump in today, and for anyone out there, we'll go ahead and just go over and do a short recap of. Yeah, I know you have a water box system, but if you could throw the measurements, how many liters, gallons, it doesn't matter. Whatever is easier for
Yeah.
you, because I'm good. I'm familiar with both. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, we can jump into like system volume, both display as a recap, and the sump, and like any add-ons or like refugiums or remote stuff that might be tied in, frag systems, whatnot. And then maybe your skimmer, just a quick overview of like your strategy, and then tell us like a little update, because I think we caught up before the holiday.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, I don't think I've caught up with you this year. So again, welcome back, bro. Glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. But yeah, so I think the last time we caught up was before the holidays. So there hasn't been too many huge changes, but yeah, the tank is a 4.5 foot water box. So it's about 130 gallons, I think, off the top of my head. For the display volume, I think the sump's like 30 or 40 gallons. I think it's 170 in total.
Was it like a 500
Uh,
liter or something like that?
yeah, I think it's 630 liters or something.
Total volume, right? Or
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
yeah. Because they
yeah,
usually,
yeah.
that's
So,
how they usually advertise them, is I think they usually include the total volume of water. And then in the beginning they would use like the dimensions as sort of like the model number. It was
mm,
like, so that's how they did it in the beginning. I don't know what Waterbox is doing anymore. It's been some time since I worked with them, but yeah,
I
excellent
think they still
excellent
do the same.
craftsmanship with their.
Yeah, yeah. I think they still do the same thing where they give you the system volume number and then they put in the display length. I think is so.
Mhm.
This one's a 170/4.5 because it's a 4.5 foot tank and the total volume's 170 gallons. But the
Gotcha.
display is 130, I think, off the top of my head. Not including rock and all of that sort of fun stuff. But in terms of the system, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing too. No, I certainly don't think there's anything too exciting going on. It's pretty straightforward. Nothing flashy. I still need to sort out what I do in terms of the supplemental lights for the halides, but
Mhm.
still enjoying and loving the having gone back to the radiums again.
Mhm.
I just think they make the tank and the fish especially as well. Everything just looks fantastic, and it's such an easy way to run things. Turn them on, have them run for 4 to 8 hours depending on what you've got, and that's pretty much it. I get some supplemental lights just to make things look a little bit nicer throughout the day, and get a bit more of that color blending and that sort of pop. But
Hmm. Hmm.
I'm happy with them. I think having gone back to them was one of the better decisions I've made in a while. We had a couple of weeks of some really like atrociously warm weather. We're
Hmm.
talking high 30s, low 40s. So there was about a week and a half there where I didn't run them, just
Okay.
because it was just way too hot for it. And down here is my study as well. So not only do the fish have to live down here, but I have to exist sometimes as well down here. So when you're
Sure, I get
talking
it.
about 35 degrees outside and two halides on, and I'm trying to work in here, it's not a nice area. So I just turned them off for a week. So things
Yeah, it's
browned
really
out a
no harm,
little
no
bit.
foul, man.
Hmm.
You think about these seasons, even in like where the native waters where, I mean, not speaking about Australia specifically on the Great Barrier Reef, I'm not quite sure, but I know in like in Fiji, in Tahiti, they have monsoon and so there's several days they'll go, sometimes weeks with, not really luminous light, if you will. So I don't
Hmm.
see any problems with that. I've talked about how I have a Reef Breeders LED unit, and in the summertime, I'm about ready to transition over, and I typically will run the LED during the summertime, and then run the fall and winter. I'll run the T5s. So
Hmm.
yeah, that's sort of like what I've been doing for ever since this tank has been brought up. But yeah, I don't see any harm or foul in it, man. I'm going to stick strictly to the to the circadian type deal, but
Hmm.
increasing 3 minutes every week on the photo period until the solstice, and then I'll do the opposite on the other side of it. Back three
Yeah.
off every week. But
Okay.
I know the system's looking lovely. I can see where you're planting corals. I see what looks like something very fluorescent in the like middle right. Yeah, right there. So yeah, that looks like a nice
Nice, sort
chunky
of,
acro right there.
yeah, nice sort of smooth green thing. I saw it in the shop and I was like, no, that's bright and green. I like that.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Stands out from a bit of distance. There's some sort of millies and some other sort of nice big piece of robusta up back.
Oh man, I
But yeah,
love the
you can.
robusta. I
Yeah,
love those
yeah,
robusta.
they're
We
they're
don't
such a
get them
great
here
coral.
anymore, man.
We
Yeah,
still
that's
get,
a
I mean,
nice one.
because robustas are sort of one of those local species that we get fairly regularly.
Mhm.
It's pretty widely available here, and I love it. I think it's just such a cool coral, and you get such nice colors from it, and just those huge thick branches is just such a contrast to most acro species where it's thinner branched and it's a bit more petite sort of thing.
Now, are you guys getting outside of the Great Barrier? Are you guys able to get any other imports into your your LFSs and whatnot, or is it
No.
pretty much what you're getting out off the reef there?
Yeah, so pretty much all coral import, doesn't matter where it's come from or anything like that, is completely illegal in Australia. So
Oh,
the
I
only
see. Yeah.
coral, yeah, so we can only have locally caught
Indigenous.
specimens. Obviously, there's a few people that sneak a couple of pieces in here and there. So Walt Disney's made its appearance. I think you can get some Orange Passion and some of those other names and that sort of thing. But they have made their appearance here. But technically, yeah, it's all pretty much straight up illegal. No coral imports. There's a huge list of fish we're not allowed to import as well. So there's the biosecurity here is very strict.
Well, yeah, I get it. So they're very protective of their indigenous, microbiology as well as
Mm,
species to native species. So I get it.
mm.
Um, Hawaii's similar in some regards. Um, yeah, man, it's looking killer. So I guess anybody who's happened to blow up with one of those fancy tenuouses probably has to keep that pretty hush on social media, I'd imagine.
Well, they keep it hush for a little bit, and then once a few frags are around, no one keeps anything hush anymore because, that's sort of part of the tricky thing is how do you improve? How do the authorities prove that it was imported? How do they prove it wasn't someone's just grown it? So there's sort
Right.
of it's a difficult thing to prove, and realistically, our current fisheries don't really have the manpower to be able to chase down, Joe Blow with his 3-foot tank that's got a piece of Walt Disney in it. It's not worth their time or effort. They're going after illegal abalone harvesting and that sort of thing instead, which is a much more
Right.
detrimental sort of activity, I suppose.
No, I get it. It just you just never know the what might be the hot topic. Sometimes these things roll through these agencies and become sort of a hot topic for a while, and then
Mm.
it cools off. So yeah, I was just curious. More than anything else, are they still pretty restrictive on microbes and stuff like that as well,
Yeah, yeah. I
like
think they're still.
bacterias and?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah. Importing any of those sort of bacterial products, any of that sort of
Mhm.
thing, there's still huge process to get it approved. It's super costly. Yeah, I mean, it's even as much as frozen foods and those sorts of things. We don't have access to like LRS or Rod's Foods or any of those sorts of you
Right.
know mixed frozen foods that are really well known in the industry elsewhere. We just don't have that sort of thing. It's like it's Ocean Nutrition or Hikari Mises sort of thing. They're your
Mhm.
frozen foods, and there's not really a whole lot of variety beyond that.
What about any kind of like local live foods or anything that are brought in as well, or is it just mainly you've got your brands that you have available and sort of that's it?
I mean, that's sort of it. There was one company that I think was trying to make like an LRS type mixed food for a
Hmm.
while there, but I haven't seen anything about them in months, if not a year or two. So I assume that either it just wasn't profitable or they weren't getting enough sold. So
Hmm.
they must have just given up on it. So realistically, and the other thing too is I don't imagine there'd be a large degree of people in the hobby that would be willing to pay that premium price tag for a better food. You get your Mises cube packs for whatever they cost here, and then if you've got something that's, 2 or 3 times the quality, but also 2 or 3 times the price, a lot of people are sort of going to scoff at that here. The hobby is, as an industry, struggling a bit here.
Okay.
There's not a lot of spending going on. Everyone's a little bit nervous. Things here in Australia are very expensive at the moment, so it's sort of
Hmm.
there's been a pretty significant downturn in the last year, couple 2 years,
Hmm.
sort of thing, um, where
I see
quite a
it
few
here
people get
too,
out.
man.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
see a
I mean,
lot
I
of.
think it.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, I think I see a lot of it everywhere. It's rough for everyone in the hobby at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say. I'm really grateful for for the people that tune in here, and that it's I've kind of taken more of an educational path, and just it's kind of like just acro centric, but very reef related.
Yeah.
And I think it's my thought was is I wanted to bring back some of the nostalgia because I think that's the kind of stuff
Hmm.
that carries us through these difficult times. It's the camaraderie, it's the um yeah, it's trying to keep that local enthusiasm. And there's things you can do instead, like barter, and there's do it yourself, and it doesn't have to be so ridiculous over the top, I don't think. um
Mm.
I was going to ask you, what about like I would imagine then food is probably pretty expensive, particularly seafood.
No, seafood's pretty cheap. I mean, if you're not buying at any of the major supermarkets and you go down to the local market, that sort of thing, you can get seafood for a decent price. Some of it, yes, is very expensive, but overall, it's well, we're surrounded by water, so it's
Right. Well,
fairly
that was.
easily accessible.
I think you see where I'm hedging, right?
Yeah.
I think you see where my mind's going, right? Like
Yes, yeah.
I'm thinking Italy right now, and I'm thinking seafood market, maybe a bag of sugar
Yeah.
out of the fridge, a little Papone method, maybe. Um, yeah, you remember that, man. These
Mm.
Italian method of cutting all these crazy killer seafoods and Celcon and
Yep.
sugar and all these goodies added in and made for a hell of a food with a
Oh,
carbon source
absolutely.
sort of embedded, you know,
Yeah.
pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, a lot of the guys that have larger tanks or higher fish loads, they're absolutely sort of doing a bit of that DIY, even if it is as simple as you just get some raw prawns and you just chop them up in the blender and you feed that. That's
Yeah. Yeah.
that's good on bulk. You can get a lot of meat out of that for not a lot of price. You throw in some scallops and some mussels and maybe some oysters.
Hmm.
Yeah, bits of fish. You can get plenty because we have a healthy Asian population here. You get a lot of those roes and a lot of those sort of
Hmm.
more unusual things that are really good for fish. High in those fatty acids and those omegas.
Absolutely.
Um, so you can find those fairly easily. We have every second suburb would have an Asian grocery where you can get all of those sort of weird things, whether they're fresh or they're frozen. It's reasonably accessible.
I used to work in a restaurant, a steakhouse, and had access. Yeah, I worked in the kitchen and had access to lobster. We would clean lobster, and I would, when you're cleaning them, you always take the guts and carve it
Mm,
out, right? And when you're making your prep and you're butterflying them and whatnot, and yeah, I would save all that muck and I would bring it home and feed the system. It was
yeah.
incredible stuff, man. Highly nutritious, a lot of fatty acids, just a lot of those real goodies that we pay premium prices for in terms of supplements at times. And, so
Mm.
anytime you can sort of think outside the box about being inside the box, I think is kind of a cool thing to do.
Yeah,
So yeah, man.
absolutely. And I
So
mean, it's important here as well because we don't have coming back to that sort of the import restrictions and regulations to get a product in here. We don't have you
mhm,
can't easily go and get Celcon, for example. A lot of
right.
those Reef nutrition type products, there's just you can't get any of those here. And whether that's a case of companies don't want to spend the money investing in getting the import permissions done for what is essentially a very small market. So I just don't think
Mhm.
we don't have the
Yeah,
buying power for a lot of those
right.
companies to justify that initial upfront cost.
It makes sense, man. Like when financial scenarios shrink, then we kind of I think I don't know how to walk this one properly, but it's like you got to really if you want to stay in the hobby, it is, I think you got to find in little ways, because when the money shrinks, typically people's hobbies begin to shrink,
Mm,
particularly when you're making decisions on feeding yourself and your family and whatnot. So,
mm,
these are things that I think are real. And I think these are challenges that are global. They're happening certainly here too. So, you're not alone in that. But anyway, like I'd love to see that you're getting some sticks put throughout the reef. Can I see? Is that sand in there, or is it a type of or is it bare bottom? I can't tell.
there is
Oh, okay,
sand,
there it is. So you have some bare
but yeah,
spots. That's all.
yeah. So up the front is obviously where all the flow sort of
Uh
converges. So it's turned into a bit of a coralline garden rather than
huh.
much in the way of sand.
No, that's a killer place to put like Montes and encrusters and let them
Mm,
just kind of do their thing, over time, and it'll look real beautiful. I was just decorating earlier, like that's why I was actually kind of thinking I was late, but um yeah, I was trying to move about my acan garden and kind of push them together into a sort of a lower flow area. So yeah, we're always doing something. Um to try to
mm,
get that aesthetic look to benefit the corals, our eyes, the whole nine. But yeah, I love the
yeah.
the balmy looks killer. I love all the avenues and little cut throughs and caves and it's holes for the fish to swim through and pass through. Over
Yeah.
time, as the acros start to really dominate the top of that structure and get up in the water column a little bit more, it's going to look even more killer as the fish dart in and out of the reef. So yeah, it's I can see the vision. I can see the vision coming alive at this point. It looks great, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not very creative when it comes to scaping and creating something interesting. So it's sort of the old pile of rocks methodology is my go-to.
Yeah, yeah. The
But
funny thing
it
is though,
works. There's lots of caves. There's lots of hiding spots.
yeah.
The fish are all happy. They're comfortable. They're not skittish. So obviously there's enough comfortable hiding spots for them that they're happy to exist in their areas.
Now, are you planting these corals directly to the structure? Or are you putting them on like separate like mariculture chunks or plugs or wild plugs or anything like that, or like a modular style? Or are you going directly like onto the rock structure?
Pretty much directly on.
Yeah. Okay.
Depends. I mean, obviously, it depends on what coral is, and some of these wild pieces that have come in. They obviously don't have any bases, plugs,
Hmm.
rocks attached to them, so they just sort of go directly in. But there's a few things that have little frag plugs. This one's fallen over and is now growing sideways. So I just sort of I pop them in, see where they're happy. If they're happy, then I just let them do their thing. I don't think they don't need to be fussed over too much.
Yeah, I used to have a lot of fun with the wilds, especially on that type of structure you have there. There's so many
Mm,
opportunities to lay them on their side or like wedge them, or like you could without using any glue. That's one
mm.
thing I really loved about wild corals is I used to just lay them about the reef without even screwing with it.
Yeah.
I liked it myself. But
Mhm. Yeah. So
try
this
to
piece,
use
I
a
literally thought,
mariculture.
this is this big robuster. I put it up the back. This can be that sort of
Uh-huh.
background piece, but I just sat it against the rock, and you can sort of already see that it started
Hmm.
to, grow and attach itself. It's probably not going anywhere anymore. But there's that, and then I've got a couple of little pieces that arrived at the fish store in rough shape. So they're just down here in a sort of lower light, lower flow area. We'll see what they do over the next couple of weeks. If they settle in all right, then I'll find a spot on the scape for them. If not, they'll go into the sump and continue being more biomedia.
You had a red one that I saw. I remember it reminded me a lot of the cricket spine
Hmm.
um,
That
from Battle
that's this
Coral.
That's this piece
Maybe it's
here. That was one of the
a
ones it's browned out a little bit. I think it didn't like having just the radion on for a couple of weeks.
yeah, is that a Divicarda? Maybe is that what I'm thinking? And I think
I
that's where my
think
mind wants to go. Is Divicarda? Maybe. I
yeah,
know that that's
it
the
could be.
species.
I think it's Rosaria. I think that's the
Okay.
species that it is. Um, that was what that's what sort of most of those really red pink pieces that we get here are mostly a Rosaria variety.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what that bright red fire truck piece that I had years ago. I'm 90% certain that was Rosaria as well. So I'm
I
hoping
love
that with
Rosarias.
yeah, I think they're a gorgeous coral and they have such nice colors to them.
Yeah, man. I used to, another corals that you used to get from on our wild boxes from Australia back in the day is the prostratas, man. Like I
Mm,
remember just getting some of these freaking long, stretched out, where they're like 4 or 6 inches, long, and then all of a sudden they tulip out and then they bust out like a flower. Oh my
yeah.
God, those things were just insane, man. I truly miss um all of those. And then I think you guys get a lot of what's the other species of millipora? The bigger,
Oh,
knobbier one. Yeah, the
the
spatula.
spathulata. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
We get
yeah.
yeah we get some crazy spat pieces here.
I remember Andrew used to show off some of those back in the day. I know he always finds his way into the conversations, but he had some killer spats back in the day. I remember.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing, he had the amount of light intensity to be able to get them to be, really happy, really
Mhm.
healthy. I don't think this is spath. This is a milli, I'm pretty sure, but it's, pretty much right below the halide. It seems to be doing all right. Pink with a bit of blue tips on it. Oh, that's not focused in. Obviously, it just looks like nothing under the blue light at the at the moment, but
Oh yeah. Do you guys still get
yeah.
the wild like live rock too? Like any stuff, are they bringing that in still?
Yeah, you get live rock here and there. Unfortunately, the way that the collection quotas work for coral collectors is live rock actually counts as part of your collection weight.
Oh,
So
I see.
instead of getting 10 kilos of acro, you're getting 10
Ah,
kilos of rock. So not only has the rock become more expensive, but it's now of a much lower what's the word lower priority, because it's not as much, or it takes up so much room for the weight compared to getting an additional 20 acros.
yeah. So you said, is it kind of a waning kind of like the market and the hobby is sort of like waning right now?
Yeah, it is waning a little bit. So I think some of the stores are doing it pretty rough. People aren't going out and buying, expensive purchases or big bits of equipment. There's still a little bit of a trickle here and there, but I think most people are just sort of m- maintaining the status quo, really.
Yeah, you remember the two brothers from Australia back in the day? I think it was like Rodney and Rory, maybe, or I think
Yes,
there
yeah,
was.
Rodney, and I think it was Ryan, I think was the other
Oh,
one.
okay. Yeah, they were both very talented reef keepers, and I always just enjoyed their content and everything. And
Mm.
like everything else, they fall off, but they obviously were impressionable upon me. So I thought it was worth mentioning if you
Yeah,
ever
yeah.
kept
Oh,
up
they
with any of
had
these.
they had fantastic tanks, and I think it was one of them. One of them spent big on the hobby, and he had just like super high tech, super fancy gear, but he had the corals to sort of reflect that spending. And they both had, yeah, just stunning tanks. But I haven't heard from or about either of them in probably 5 or 6 years now. So I assume they're both either out of the hobby or just not on the Facebook groups.
Right, right. So that actinic, I think we talked about it last time. You got the 250 single ended 20K radiums. Is that what we're
Yep.
working with here?
Yeah. So just two 250 single ends, and then I've just got, from when I was running the Radions, the Radion in the center there. That's
Hmm.
just that's more of a stopgap while I decide, what I'm
Sure.
going to do in terms of supplemental. I'm thinking I'll get some LED strips to do that supplementing. It's just a matter of deciding what those LED strips are and where they come from, because we just a lot of the ones that make it here are really expensive. So
Oh, I
if I
would
was to get
imagine.
yeah, so if I was to look at two of the AI blade LED strips for
Hmm.
two 4 foot units, that's, I think, like 1600 $1,500 for two LED strip lights.
Oh,
And when they're realistically just supplements, I'm not spending
yeah,
that much
no,
money just for a bit of blue pop. And so
yeah.
some of those ones get ruled out pretty quickly. I'm sort of looking at, Reef Bright is in a bit of a similar situation where the 4 foot bars are, I think, $500 or $600 each. So
Yeah,
again, you're
come
talking
on.
$1,000 for supplements, and I'm not about that. If it was the main
No.
source of light, yeah, maybe, or the shipping costs and on them just make them just so expensive. Um, so it's sort of more of a consideration of maybe looking at some Orfex, or I go for a sort of no name custom option that's direct from the manufacturer in China or something, because we have really good access to that is one positive.
Yeah, that would be my direction, honestly. Like I
Mm.
just, especially with the halides. I mean, they're doing the majority of the work. So you don't really need the extra, if you will. So yeah, I mean the actinic bars, I use on my reef, man. I use an SD reef or SB reef or whatever it is. I mean, the thing was like $75 shipped like 10
Yeah.
years ago, and like probably like two diodes are out, and maybe one or two or and I don't even give a shit, man, because if you think about it, you're just like, all right, look, man, with LEDs, dude, I know that they're supposed to last forever and whatnot, but in my experience, they don't. Not every single diode. And
No.
so then you're like, okay. And then the other issue I've seen is fan is I've never seen a fan that can do well on a T5 or an LED unit, to be
Mm,
honest with you. Unless you're very meticulous about cleaning the fan blades and whatnot. You know how it goes,
yeah.
man. So I think you're right, man. I would lean on what you're doing, and then just a couple China 5-watt Cree LED bars, blue and UVs either side, one on either side of the system. Call it a day.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at the prices of some of those, I can get 4-foot bars for I think it's about $250. So when
Yeah,
you're
that's
talking
killer.
about something that's 1,000 to
Oh
$1,200
yeah, yeah.
cheaper, that realistically does the same amount of work for the same amount of output, it's realistically it's a no brainer. Sure, they might not last quite as long, but realistically, they're just supplements. I'm not going to be running them full bar. They're going to be tuned down a little bit, so I'm still going to get that longevity out of them. And then the more expensive options can still die on you. Most people have issues with
Mhm.
every and all products. I know there's a great deal of people that love the Vortec MP4, and the MP pumps, and there's also the same amount of people that think that they're hot trash, and that they destroy themselves within a year, 6 months, that sort of thing.
Yeah, like again, I have to look at this, and I look at it like a okay. Well, I don't watch TV. Okay, so I have a TV, but I don't. It's not
Mm.
even plugged in. I haven't looked at it, and I can't remember when the last time that thing was on. Maybe a surf contest or something. I tried to stream YouTube
Yeah,
or whatever. But at any rate, by the time you get it home, unbox it, plug it in, whatnot, and it breaks like 6 months later, it's like, okay, well, now they're $100 cheaper. You go down, you get another one. And it seems like that's just what it is. So when you're
yeah,
kind of keeping that mentality in mind, why would you go and spend, in my humble opinion, right now, $400 to $600? I think actually, from last time I heard, it's like almost $400 for an MP10. And it's like, okay, so how I can buy three JBOs.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things where the
Oh,
MP10 here is $600. And I
it's
mean, to be
crazy.
fair, I'm neither a hater nor necessarily a lover of the ecotech products. But there's two MPs in my tank that I've had for, I would say, probably 10 years now, and they've been running every day nonstop for 10 years. So I think I've replaced one wet side between the two of them. So sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some.
Hell
But
yeah.
if one dies and I can't fix it or replace it, then yeah, I'm going to look at the new JBL options where you get basically the clone for a third, if not a fifth of the price.
I mean, like, I got an old ATI unit that's 10 years old that like does so killer. And I take the light shield off. I don't run
Mm,
the light shield because the fans
mm,
always break. And so instead of
yeah,
replacing the fan, I'm like, all right, well, I'll just take a Drio, like some low watt that puts out a lot of air, and I just in an obscure place on the floor or a little stand or whatever next to the tank, and blow right at the bulbs and just blast the
yeah,
bulbs with a fan all day long, and then the bulbs will last 2 to 3 years. So it's
yeah.
like you can get away with all these different things. And yeah, I mean, I'm stoked to see you're getting into that tech from the past, with the metal halides. And and you're just stoked on it. You're not even like questioning, what your intention is. And it's going to be so killer when you start getting even more acros, and
Yeah.
it's going to be awesome. I'm stoked for you because, yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
that was my
mean,
favorite.
yeah, and I've had this conversation with a few people now, and mentioned it a few times on some of the forums and everything. People are talking about how some people say, "Oh, well, tanks these days are so fantastic; they've come such a long way," and it's like, well, yes, but
Mhm.
also no, because some of the best tanks I've ever seen are from 10, 15, 20 years ago. Where you're talking wall to wall SBS, just absolutely incredible
You know what it
colors,
is, bro?
peak, growth.
You know what it is, bro? Here's the thing, man. And I don't mean to sound old fart salty, because I really don't want to send this message. This is the wrong message. I don't want to be that old guy. But we had to take a DSLR camera. We had to study
Mm,
how to adjust white balance. We had a hue, how to get the right, Kelvin, color, settings. And then we had to figure out how to post edit it just to make
yeah.
it look like something. Whereas now you can take a Samsung, go into pro mode, and it is better than any DSLR photo wise that I've ever seen. And so it's like part yes and no, because if you
Yeah.
had these modern phones and had the ability to capture some of these systems from back in the day with modern
Oh,
technology,
yeah.
or if you had LED accents on some of these tanks from back in the day, I think you
Yeah.
would probably be saying people would probably be looking at this a little bit differently and say, wait a minute,
Mm.
maybe actually it's pretty much still the same. And really it's still the same. Because think about
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. You're talking about some of these tanks that, these phenomenal tanks out there, and the people that are documenting, the owners of these reefs were basically professional photographers, or at least had
correct.
to be, simply to just
Mhm.
get the pictures to a point where it was, this is an actual real life look of how the tank looks. But that was, that's hours and hours of work. That's, you set up a camera, you take a bunch of pictures, then you got to sort through the ones that are in focus. Then you've got to do your post processing, and then you've got to upload it. And it's not put it in pro mode, do a quick edit based on an
Yep.
app, and then upload it
And then
from
it's
there.
up
It's yeah,
5 minutes
yeah,
later.
yeah, yeah,
Man, I tell you what, bro, I was that guy going down to Best Buy and spending over $1,000 on a DSLR freaking Canon EOS Rebel,
yeah,
and I was that guy. And
yeah.
I was so addicted to taking photos, and it literally all had to do with just the mornings and a cup of coffee and seeing what was going
Mm.
on out in the Reef Central world. And those were some days, man. And it was always this one up game we were playing, like Andrew would drop photos, and then somebody would drop, and it's like we're all dropping photos just to,
Yes.
like on top of everybody's photos. And we were just having so much fun. And
Mm.
yeah, we were all like amateur, like photographers, really.
Yeah,
We were,
absolutely.
somewhat decent for amateurs, and I thought it was cool, man. There's some really cool things about, reefing back then. It was definitely cool.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think the social media and the sort of not it's not necessarily a lack of consistency, because there are people out there with their tanks, posting, regular updates, but there's sort of it's just it's just content. It's not actually an update. It's sort of like, here's this picture I took of this coral, or it's
Mhm.
here's I'm doing this. It's not a revolving conversation that you get with the forums, where it's, oh, I'm doing this, this is what I've changed recently. Someone's got a question,
Right.
oh, why did you do that? Here's the reason. It's a lot harder to have those conversations on Instagram or Facebook.
Mhm.
Your comments can get lost in the void. It's difficult to, you don't want to have, a 10 comment conversation with someone on their Instagram post or something, but in the forums, you get that back and forth. You get that ability to, you, pass on that information, talk about things, get other people's opinions. I don't see anyone posting on Instagram, while what I'm looking at a new piece of equipment, what does everyone recommend? There's sort of not any of those sorts of things. Yeah, as Casey's just said, yeah, we have lost a
Yeah.
lot of that learning part where, you're able to build on the knowledge, or, you have a bad experience with something and someone goes, well, hang on a second, actually, no, this was due to X or Y, and you can actually fix that, or
Right.
yeah, we have lost a lot of that ability to sort of have that learning and have that sort of open dialogue with each other and about what's going on in everyone's tanks.
Yeah, I can't agree more, man. Like, there was and there was something about, I don't know, man. It just felt so real. And now it just feels
Mm.
so plastic. And so yeah, it's like, when I caught myself, man. I played around with AI, and man, I'll tell you what, it categorized the shit out of some stuff for me, man. Like, it brought some stuff forward, like, I was able to wrap my mind around parts of reefing that, like, I can't even explain. But when I realized is this was my information, and it was just mirroring this stuff back to me. It was
Mm.
categorizing it, was organizing it, but literally, I was building all of this architect on the backside, right? And
Mm.
I'm like, I don't know, man. And then I look out here and I start seeing all these new reef channels develop, and I see all these killer photos, and they're all like, touched so perfectly. And I'm like,
Mm.
and so I see what's going on, like, it's, you can see what's going on, right? And I quickly reverted back and I said, no, I grew this shit like, grassroots, it's all from the ground up. Like, I have a phone like you right now, and we're just
Mm.
doing this stuff. We're having fun on a Friday
Yeah.
night talking shit. And you're not tethered, I'm not tethered, in the ways that we can discuss the hobby. And I like that. And so yeah,
Yeah.
man, I mean, it's I think it's something that what I wanted to do is just sort of inject it back in to the hobby, and kind of get some more of that life going, because Instagram feels so plasticky. I will tell you though that, like, I enjoy Rich's content quite a bit. And the reason
Yeah.
why I enjoy Rich's content is because he takes the time. He has badass corals, probably some of the
Mm.
most beautiful corals around. But what I'll tell you is he takes the time to document them. He talks about them,
Mm.
what it is, and I think he even tries to go into scientific. And I'm hoping that maybe when I was doing this like spotlight thing, that maybe he kind of got inspired through that sort of thing. And I'm like, to go for it, dude. You're doing such a killer job with this. Please do it. But I was having a lot of fun highlighting corals. But let's face
Mm.
it, dude, I don't have them to do anymore. So it's like, what am I going to do? Like 9 spotlights? Okay, cool. All right. Talk to you next year. Maybe they've grown a little bit, so it kind of lost its luster. But I would love to see somebody with an insane collection pick right back up.
Mm.
I'm going to tell him to do that on his channel, and, like, to start to take that and go do it your own way, but do it, man, because you're good at it.
Yeah.
And I think that part of what Rich is doing on Instagram, I like, because it does have
Mm.
that, and I like what everybody's really doing, but it just seems so very like, no emotions, no love,
It's more down to
no
earth.
human to human kind of thing. It just feels so like, and
Yeah.
I'm not on it enough anymore. I don't even give a shit about. I mean, it's like, I'm so annoyed by it, if anything. Like, 'cause I put the account on private, dude, and now it dings me every like 2 seconds, and I'm like, oh my god, confirm, and I'm just gonna throw that shit back on open.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I try and do it a little bit, but yeah. I spend most of my time on forums still, And I mean,
Yeah.
you're talking about forums and a blast from the past, Casey Aquatics or Nivek down there. Kevin, I think the first forum I joined was Reef Sanctuary, and that was probably every bit of 15 years ago or so, because I was originally looking at getting a small Red Sea tank, and that was
Uh-huh.
where all of the Red Sea tanks were. Was if you had a Red Sea tank, you were on Reef Sanctuary, because they had this enormous sub forum that was just Red Sea tanks. And
Oh,
yeah,
really? I didn't know that.
that's someone. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was sort of where I started, and so you know I met Kevin back then. That was, that's a friend that I've known and someone I've known for I would say every bit of 15 years now. And it wasn't until I think it was about, no, it was probably 6 or 12 months ago now. I was sort of logging into some of the old forums and looking at some of the old threads that I used to interact with, and, did a little bit of stalking, mild social media stalking to try and find, see if anyone was still in the hobby. And yeah, Kevin's now Reef Panda on Instagram, and so I reached out to him and was like, how you going? Nice to see you still going. And yeah, you catch up with some of these people, and you get back into the swing of things, and some of these people are still going all these years later.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm just trying to I'm stoked to have a little tank, man. Like I said, I could upgrade, but I just can't see a reason to do it right now. Like, we were talking about the economy and whatnot, and I'm like, I one thing about little nano reefs too is like you see these nano reefs, and I don't ever really see them go to like full max. And the one that I did back in the day, speaking of back in the day, is there was a guy that went by Robert Roberthus. I don't know if you remember him. He was from the Netherlands, and he had a
Oh, yeah.
50-gallon aquarium, and he had over 50 fish in it. I mean, like it was the most insane thing. You can still see his final YouTube video. Anybody who's out there following along, I challenge you to go watch that video of Roberthus, and it's like you can just type in Roberthus final video or something like that, or farewell video. And let me tell you, dude, it was wall to wall, top to bottom, coral. And, this was back 15 years ago, 20 years
Yeah.
ago. It's insane, you know? So yeah, it's
Absolutely.
really neat, man, just to catch up and jump into the old vibes, man. Like, I'm really stoked to see what you're doing, that you're still in the hobby, that you're on
Yeah.
the upswing of building this reef. And it's nice that, the layout's there, the canvas is there, and now you get to have that real fun. And, like the fact that you're buying these, possibly a distressed coral shows that you're in no real hurry, and you can be patient and just, I might have to cut a piece off of it and ditch the whole thing, or it might come back. But either way, it might turn into something insane. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we just don't give the hobby a chance. We don't give the system the chance to go full scale
Yeah.
mature.
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps. I mean, I think one of the big differences between here and the US, for example, is that sort of that named coral, that aquaculture,
True.
the farming that occurs. In the US, because like I was there, what was it? About a month ago now. I was in the US. I was in California and Nevada for 2 weeks, and
Oh, yeah.
managed to get out and visit a couple of stores down in California. And talking to the shop owners and these guys, they've got tanks with, heaps of acros in them. And, talking to them, they're all farmed. They're all mariculture. No, they weren't even mariculture. They were all aquacultured within the US. They were all farmed. And so, they
Mhm.
all had their names. They all had their lineage, that's there, that's readily accessible. And it is nice being able to buy a coral and know exactly what you're going to get. You know that when the coral is at its happiest, its polyps are this color, it gets corallites of that color, and the tissue down deeper is this color. And if it doesn't look like that, then maybe something's off, or you need to do something differently. Whereas here we get a few of those name pieces. There's a few pieces that had their own names, but 90% of it is because the access to the wild caught stuff, the wild collected stuff it's there. I can go out and I can get a colony of stunning acro for $60 to $100. Why would I go and spend $250, $300, 4, 5, 6, $700 on a named piece that's a 1-inch frag when I can get essentially a whole colony?
Well,
It's got good colors.
you also got the fact too, man, like diamonds in the rough. I
Mm,
just, if you understand it, and you've been in it long enough, that sometimes you can get a brown turd. And the beauty to me is taking something that's a turd and turning it into something like that magnificent. And that's
oh,
the testimony of a reef keeper that's dialed in. And if you were messing around with wild corals specifically, or you're messing around with maricultures,
mm,
you know that challenge scale just got elevated. It's like screwing around with granulosas and speciosa, like these hard to keep corals. It's like you're
Yeah.
going, yeah, I'm ready for this next level. Oh yeah, I
Yep.
want that next level. That's the challenge of all challenge. And to
Mm.
me, taking a wild coral or a maricultured coral and being able to turn it into something and then creating a named lineage off of that, to me, that's the grail, you know.
I,
I'm
yeah,
I know
I
it's old
totally agree
fashioned.
with you. Yeah, I mean, if I go into the shop and I buy, let's say I buy two or three acro pieces, I guarantee you that at least one of those pieces always is something brown, something unassuming where I go, I think that has some potential. I recognize the species, I recognize where it might be going, and I'm just going to throw it in the tank and we'll see what happens. If it stays brown and it stays unhappy, so be it. It is what it is. If it turns into something nice, then yeah, great. I'm thrilled.
Well, it's sort of a blessing and a curse, man. It's like we always want what we don't have, you know. Like, yeah, I'm sure reefers over there would love all the name stuff, but I'm gonna lean on. I like what Australia is doing in this case, and here's why: is because it forces diversity. Whereas
Hmm.
if you're not careful and your imports slow down in the United States, for example, and new corals are now being instructed, like don't pull that off the reef. It's not this or it's not that. And next thing you know, you can almost crop steer, your corals into, one type of, you can bottleneck the
Hmm.
lineages, and
Yeah.
that's the only concern I have is like all of a sudden now you're not going to see the Sirhansois or you're not going to see the,
Hmm.
those crazy deep waters or, some of these real like the Robusta. I mean,
Yeah.
or an abro or all of these like knobby, like you don't see that stuff here, and so yeah, man, I just want to mention like we probably tend to like want what we can't have access to, and I think that's a part of the deal with the reef keeping. It just happens.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the most upsetting thing is the variety of smooth skins and the smooth skin species that we have access to here is sorely lacking. I think we get
Mhm.
we get some Loripes, we get some Jacquelineae, and
Mhm.
I think you can get a couple of granulosas, and that's sort of about it. Beyond that, we're not getting any of those things coming out of Indo. Those Malaysian ones. Some of those
Mhm.
ones that you guys have access.
Mhm.
Especially some of those deep waters coming out of. I think is it Raja Ampat down there. They have. I would say some of the best smooth skin acro species and varieties that I've ever seen existed in my entire time in this hobby. But I'm never going to be able to have access to those unless we move out of the country, and it's just part of life.
Well, I tell you, man, like if you really want to step up to the real deal challenge, to me, if you can keep a true Aussie uh blue ice uh fire and ice echinata, if you can keep that coral and you can take it to a full-on colony, man, you have my like woo,
Mm.
you are the man. you know or woman, whatever, you're the shit. All right, because if you
Yeah.
can if you can take care of that coral, you are definitely on to some really good stuff. So yeah, man, I'm a big fan of that coral. It is every time I've had it, it's like it. Yeah, it goes very quickly. It just doesn't
Yeah.
stick around.
Yeah, I think we have a bit better luck with them here. I think it's one of those things where the shipping stress plays a big part
It
into
probably is.
how well they do. As I think I mentioned it last time. Here in Australia, I can even down in Melbourne, I can get acros that have come off the Great Barrier Reef within 24 hours, 48 hours of them coming out of the water.
So man, we got a lot of people out there. Welcome everybody to the chat. Stoked everybody's showing up for my buddy down under. Joe, I see you out there, Annette. Yeah, all of Jaguar, Rich, what's up? KC Aquatics, Yazin Reef. Oh my God, BDA video. Thank you guys for popping in here and joining us. We're really stoked. As far as par, Dom, or you want to go ahead and tackle that? Do you even measure?
No, I don't
Okay,
think I've ever
so
measured
we're
the
so
par. I
old
don't.
school.
Yeah.
Jaguar, we're probably like so old school that what we do, here's what I do. I go usually like I always say 10 inches off the water line for T5s if it's a 24-inch tank. Start there, and then I go up or down depending on what I'm liking or where I'm mounting corals on that
Hmm.
structure, how far up. Right now, to give you an idea, my T5s are within 14 inches of the acros. So par, I would say probably 7, 8, 9. I don't know, 100 at least. I mean, but it's soft, right? It's T5s.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's intense. I mean, shit, I'm real close. Yeah, I'm frying my corals. And they love it, man. A-cans love it. And I'm sure you're the same way. How many inches off the water line are you?
I think that halides sit pretty much spot on about a foot.
12 inches, yeah.
Yeah, so they're pretty much spot on about
And that's a
12 inches
20,
off.
what, 21 inch deep or 22-inch deep?
24, so standard two
Oh, it
foot
is
deep.
24. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So obviously down lower, I don't know. I genuinely wouldn't be able to tell you what the par is. I don't think I've ever measured, and it's just not something that I've ever considered. Either you like being under highlight, or you go a bit lower down in the tank.
Yeah, and what'll happen is those acros are gonna want that light, and that's gonna be the cool thing is when you start seeing them really perking and stretching and reaching
Mm,
for that light, man. Like absolutely, yeah, cooking them, Jaguar. Look, depending on the type of light, we're talking about metal halide here, and you can almost put that metal halide down on 1 inch away from the water surface.
mm.
I've seen like 4 to 6 inches off the water line with metal halide, 400 waters, and stags like literally trying to grow out of the water to reach the light.
Yeah,
So, yeah, I
yeah.
don't know
I mean,
why, but it's different than those point source diode, those individual diodes, because they
mm,
have such a small line. Whereas like T5s, it's like that flat light. So yeah, you can like roast them. You can put them right up
yeah,
underneath it, and they love it.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
realistically, I'd probably, all things being considered equal, I would probably actually run 400 watts bulbs on this tank. Given the foot off the water, and then probably another foot into the tank before there's
Mhm.
rock. I realistically, I'd like to run the 400 watts, but just in the space, it's probably unless I insulate the garage and potentially get a small aircon system in here, I'm just not going to run 400 watts. It's just too much to exist in the room as well as have all of that power and that heat in here, and so. I'll settle for my 250 watts, and they put out a shitload of light still.
Well, hell yeah! You remember Tim Herman back in the day had like a little 20 gallon underneath a 250 or 400 watt halide. I
Yeah,
mean, it was crazy. And growing acropore in this like little small tank in his like college dorm room, and had a big
mm.
halide blasting the shit out of it, and it was all over Reef Central. You remember that?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah,
but
that
that
was.
was the thing was, you had all these little tanks where people were just like, you know what, I like halides. We'll just run a halide on it. To be fair, I think it's making a bit of a resurgence. I think there's two or three tanks on Humble Fish that I follow, and they've got their threads going where they've got. I think one of them's a 175 watt, and the other one's a 150 or 250 watt over what is essentially 10, 20 gallons, and the tanks are doing great. They look awesome too.
Well, you may remember we weren't paying as much for power back then, but
Yeah.
freaking, you had to have a chiller. Like I
Mm,
mean, you had to get your water cooled down. SD Reef, yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. Yeah, I
yeah, man.
mean, yeah, that's the thing. To be fair, I've never actually run chillers. I didn't run them previously. I haven't run them on this tank. I think the warmest I sort of get to is about 26 and a half, 27 degrees. I try and keep it at about 24 and a half. So I've got a bit extra leeway in terms of, when things start to warm up a bit. But, Andrew was the same. He never ran chillers. It was like, the tank will get as warm as it gets. And if it starts to get above 27, you just turn the halides off. And it'll cool down eventually. And then they can go back on the next day.
Yeah, SD Reef, his tanks are beautiful. He's been around forever
Mm,
too. I forget his name. I think it's Peter, maybe. I can't remember 100%, but yeah, definitely. definitely a super awesome person in the hobby. I've always enjoyed him throughout the years, all his content,
Mm.
some of the most insane corals too. But yeah, man, like shit, dude, I had a little tank back. Oh, it's Cameron. Okay, my bad. I had a little 30-inch, 70-gallon Zeovit tank. Do you remember that thing?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had a 250-watt metal halide and 8 T5s on that, dude. 8 T5s and a 250-watt metal halide, and it was only 18 inches.
Yeah. I mean, I think back in the day when I had the little 50-gallon 2-foot cube as well. That was 250 or 400-watt bulb. That was 4 T5s. And I think that was like that far off the water surface. Like I could barely fit my arm into the tank. That's how close it was. And I was absolutely blasting those poor bloody corals with light, and they loved it. It was one of the nicest tanks I've had sort of over the years.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Like, there's just so many ways, man. And then you got Rich that comes in with these AI blades, and then just goes ahead and just says, "All right, well, yeah, you guys keep talking all this shit about T5s and halides," and he just goes and shows you what you can do with those blades. So it just shows you there's really no right way, wrong way, or
Mm.
whatever. It's just I think for me, probably you, maybe you can answer for yourself. I think it's just what makes you feel comfortable? What makes you feel
Yeah,
confident in your skills? And for me,
yeah.
I already know what I do. Like I'm already dreading like LED season because I already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get
Mm.
on this phone and I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, I can turn the blue up to 10 more percent and I'll take the red and I'll put it up for, and and I keep doing that stuff. Whereas T5s or metal halides, you just put it on, let it go. And it's like, find something else to tinker around with, or, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, I think the biggest, like I had the Radions on this for a good few years, and I don't have
Mhm.
anything against them. They're great lights. They're the Gen 4s.
Uh-huh.
I like the Gen 4s. I would probably get, if I go back to LEDs or I do LEDs again, I probably keep these Gen 4s and get them running. But I just prefer the way the halides look. I think it looks so much nicer. I think, it really illuminates everything. You don't have these sort of harsh shadows in the rock work. They're much softer shadows. There's not so much contrast in the tank, whereas the LEDs, it's sort of, I feel like the light just comes down so directly that, any little overhang, maybe any little nook and cranny, you get really deep shadows in them. Whereas the halides, because the lights, and you're talking about giant reflectors as well, where you're bouncing all that light round and it's sort of, there's more diffusion occurring. Those shadows, that was like one of the biggest things I noticed immediately between the LEDs and the halides. I think I've even got a couple of photos showing the difference.
Mhm.
Um, and it's just, yeah, just from the shadowing perspective, huge difference. Not even talking like coral shadowing and growing, underneath and that sort of thing. Just in the rockwork, just how the tank looks. Um, and then that's not to mention just how much nicer I think the fish look as well.
Well, see, okay, so all right, so let's dive into this because we can go a little deeper into this. And I always like diving deep. Um, in Australia, your access is to wild corals, and I think probably if you're going to bring in wild or maricultured corals, you're probably going to have a higher percentage strike rate with those things making it
Mm,
under halides. Um, because when they come in, they're super bright, like super bright. If
mm,
you put those into an LED system, you are gonna probably put yourself in an imposition. I don't know if you're gonna be able to match those demands without harming or like hitting it with a bright spot or whatever.
yeah.
See what I'm saying? Because you're trying to take what's coming from the ocean and literally trying to do what you can to match its like environment, at least for the first generation. Because like you said
Mm,
before, you were just here and you went into a few shops and you could recognize that everything is tank raised. So when you really think about it, if it's tank raised, you're looking at by the second, third, or fourth generation is what
yeah.
we're in right now. We're probably in around the fourth or fifth generation, maybe even further along of tank raised corals, specifically tenuous type corals under
Mm.
LED. And so what happens is, these corals are adaptive, right? And so again, I think it's just your strategy. You're in
Yeah.
Australia, you have access to wild corals. If I was in your shoes, I wouldn't do anything different. Honestly,
Yeah.
I would have either T5 or I would have metal halide. But I would probably say that metal halide for those corals is probably would make them a little bit happier, me personally. But
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I agree. And when you think about, like, the other thing to consider is when you're talking about those mariculture farms, they're all in shallow water. They're all in, 5, 10 meters of water, because no one wants to go out into the deep ocean to
right.
farm corals. They want to be, 20 meters, 100 meters offshore, where it's easy to get to, and you don't need serious equipment to farm it. A lot of it you can either do it on held breath,
Mhm.
or scuba tanks that'll last you forever down at that depth, because it's shallow. And so you're talking about these mariculture pieces coming in that are just getting, they're out on these farms getting blasted with light. And
Mhm.
yeah, I agree. I think that the LEDs need to be potentially a second generation, or they've been in tank conditions for a year or two, sort of thing, versus blasting them straight away straight under LEDs. I think it might be too much of a shock for them, or too much of a difference.
It can be done because I mean I know that
Mm.
like my buddy who used to own Stormborn Reef here, he used to get them in maricultured, but we would go back and forth all the time. I'd be like, Steve, bro, you need to put these under T5s at least minimal when you bring them in for the first few weeks. And but he was adamant, and he just didn't have that strike rate that I think he could have had he used a tech that was more adaptive to the native waters, something that's going
Mm.
to not have the shadowing. And then when you look into that first cut, and he was always successful when he would cut frags and then cook them, next to it, right? And it would start that second generation. It would usually do pretty well. Yeah, the
Yeah.
KH definitely. Yeah, definitely need to keep that
Mm.
KH down near seawater level for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and I think new FX raises a valid point too, in terms of, I think that I like to see that the industry is moving in that direction with the LED units. Is now we're not doing so much the point sources like the G4, the
Mhm.
Gen 4 Radions. You're getting,
Sure.
those AI Stratons, the Coral
They're
Cares.
insanely good,
They're big boards
insanely
in
good.
the skies. You're talking a big board with spread out LEDs, so you get more diffusion, you get more spread. Um, and running multiple of those units, where you get that blanket, it's
Mhm.
not hotspot here and hotspot here, and then we sort of diffuse between those hotspots. It's that even blanket across the whole skate and the whole tank, whatever you're doing or you're running. It's getting that light out everywhere.
Yeah, and I would say I see with the Viper Specters 100%, man. Like I was even thinking that like you could even use a botany grow light and just use the spectrums on that, and then use strips on either side for your for
Mm.
your up and down. I mean, there's so many ways to skin this cat.
Yeah.
And the corals would probably love that 6500 Kelvin
Mm.
full on bright white light. But
No,
yeah,
I
I mean,
mean,
it's just one of them things. I think you're right. As long as it seems like ATIs probably, like if I know reef breeders, I can attest to using it. I'm still preferential to T5s over it. I'm just going to be
mm,
straightforward, but
yeah,
I like the light. I interchange it on this system, like I said, seasonally.
yeah,
I may forego it this year because I'm about to get a brand new AC system installed in my home. So if that happens, I might just ride the T5s on out. But
yeah.
but either way, man, like there's the tech. If I always said like you should be able to grow acros under a shop light, dude. Like for real. You should. You should be able to grow them right underneath shop lights, and you're not might not get the best coral color. You might not
Mm,
get the best hues, hell, I mean, they might not be the happiest squirrels in the world, but what I'm trying to say is I think we put way too much thought on it, and there's other things I think that probably are other contributing factors that might be a little more important. But I do think the light plays into the overall microbiome too, though.
I
If we
mean,
were to dive,
yeah,
go
I mean,
ahead.
you look at tanks of 20 years ago when they were running the 6500 Kelvin halides. The growth on some of those tanks was, I think it would scare people these days. It was so fast. Did the corals kind of look like shit? Yeah, they didn't look great, but they grew like nothing else. And so, it's a bit of a balancing act of, do you want the growth? Do you want the colors? But I think you can achieve it I don't think there's any real there's no one way, and I don't think there's any necessarily bad way to do it. It all works. There's pretty much any method you can think of. There is a gorgeous tank out there running that method.
Yeah, Rich says can't grow under T5s can't grow corals. Yeah, yeah. It says the guy who ran eight bulbs over a Solana. Yeah, okay. I'm just kidding, but no, I
I
think
mean,
he
I like
did. I think he had like 8 bulb, 24-inch 8 bulb T5 fixture over that little nano tank.
mm,
And yeah, I mean, I always go back to Rich's Solana and compliment him constantly on that Solana because it was a tank that was in my memory bank from back in the
yeah,
day. And that was right around the time of the rainbow tenuous that he's known for. So yeah,
yeah.
man, tank's looking killer, man. I love that you're planting the acros about, and I know that one of these days I'm going to try to get you to fire up them T5s while we're in a live stream, but we'll wait to the winter. You know. So
Yeah.
what season is it there right now?
We're coming to the tail end of summer.
Okay.
So the warm weather's starting to calm down a little bit. We're starting to get back into the nicer swing of things. I'm not a summer person. I'm not a hot weather person. Um, but so yeah, it's starting to calm down a little bit. And the only unfortunate thing was we had some hot weather, and it's sort of been we've had a couple of thunderstorms the last day or two. So it's just humid as anything at the moment. And it's
I
gross.
love it. I
Oh
I
no.
I, I like doing my workouts in 100. That's my goal.
No.
100 100. 100
Oh,
degree
I couldn't
temp,
even
100 degree
worse.
humidity. Yeah, that's when I do cardio, dude.
Oh no,
Yeah,
no, yeah,
a little,
not
little
not
out
about
there.
that for me.
I'm on a bike, man, so the wind's kind of going against me a little bit,
Yeah,
so it's not
yeah,
so
yeah.
hot.
Make it a little bit better, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
your brain
yeah,
almost literally cooks out of your skull, but it's still you get a good workout. So
yeah.
you burn a
Oh,
lot of
for sure.
calories.
Yeah,
So it's all good.
absolutely. You
But now I've
sweat it
been
all off.
speaking of planting, dude, I've been we're going into so we're finishing winter and we're heading
Mm,
into the warm. So I'm stoked because I can't stand cold weather. I'm like I can't stand it, like stand it at
yeah.
all. And so, I like the hot weather and I'm excited
Yep.
about it. And the garden's gonna start coming back. We took a freeze here, Dom, and it wiped out almost all of Florida.
Yeah,
Mangoes,
sure.
all sorts of really good fruit trees. It was devastating.
Yeah.
Devastating. Yeah. And so right as we recovered, we're trying to get through the other side. We got another late one. This week it was down in the 30s again here, which I don't know
Mm.
what that is in Celsius, but it's pretty cold. It's freezing. So yeah, I would love to migrate there, man. Like, is KC Aquatics in Australia?
No, no, over in Singapore, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it's Singapore.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
Singapore is
Man,
basically
I
the
would
same
love
temperature
to.
year round. It's just whether you're at 200% humidity or you're not. You're at 100% humidity. That's the only real change. My family lived in Singapore for, I think, how long did they live over there? They were there for 3 years or something.
Malaysia. Hell
From
yeah.
Malaysia,
Well,
so
like the
just
funny
around the
thing
corner from
is,
Singapore.
so Malaysia is like sort of like I believe the climate is equatorial, like where it lies, I believe, is a very similar climate to Florida, and particularly as you get further in South Florida. I don't like, but with the exception of their rainy monsoon season, I think it's like more of a
Mm.
rain season, where ours is actually a cold season. But the climate, a lot of my plants, a lot of what I plant around the house is like, a lot of stuff from Thailand, Vietnam, like all sorts of different mints and basils and stuff like that do really killer here. My
Yeah.
turmeric, my ginger, all from Thailand, So yeah, I mean, freaking, what do you say? 28 to 32.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that,
I
yeah,
love it,
that's too
man. I
warm for
mean,
me.
I
Anything
love
above
it.
22 degrees, that's it. I'm out. Too hot.
I love it, man. Like, it's funny because like my kid rags on me all the time because I work out all summer long, and I'm in the garden all day. So all I do is garden and then work out. Like that's what I do. And then so I use the hose. I don't, I'm just like, I'm gonna hose off, and that's my shower. I'm like, if I have something impressive to do, then I suspect I'll take a hot shower. But during the summer, it's all yeah, it's all under the hose. But
Yeah.
yeah, man, I know I'm a whack job. But yeah, Malaysia's got some of the sickest smooth skin corals that I've
Mm.
laid my eyes on. I love the Kim de la Creme. The Kim BK Kim Creme de la Creme. I think it was a
Yeah.
Malaysia um piece that popped up I don't know, about 12 years ago or something like that, but it's
Mm.
got a really interesting bright red polyps and sort of like this like tannish kind of skin. It's really an interesting coral. It's just
Mm.
gorgeous. It's like a golden tan skin. Just gorgeous, man. But yeah, Malaysia definitely has the smoothies for sure.
Yeah, and some of those specioses that are coming out of Malaysia as well are
I won't
just
mess with them.
unbelievable. Just crazy corals. Like,
Oh
yeah,
my gosh,
some
I
of the stuff I
know.
see,
I'm not sure if
it's
Rich
just
has any in his collection right now. Yeah, yeah, bringing in the bangers. Yes, Malaysia. That is where your jaw droppers, all these funky ass, craziest, hard to keep
mm,
corals. I would imagine a lot of them are coming from Malaysia. That
yeah.
they always seem to have this sort of look about one. Oh, he does have one of the creme de la cremes. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
So
I think Alan CRT he had some crazy speciosus, but that was like a couple of years ago or something. So like he's been doing. I'm not sure if he's got any more these days, but yeah, I think he shared a reel or a story or something from a post that he of one of his speciosus from ages ago, and they're just stunning corals, like just incredible.
well, dude, he's got. I don't know anybody. Okay, so again, I don't interact with that many people, but you know that jaw dropper lineage. Tim lost it, and
Mm.
he. I don't know if you remember, but that was the absolute craziest YouTube video I've ever seen. Is Tim showing the jaw dropper and just twisting it around? It was like all black around it or whatever, and he was just turning the jaw dropper around like this, and it was a freaking colony. And I'm just sitting here like, oh. And then what he did is he dropped some frags, and I bought two frags from Tim. I was in love with that coral, but I had such a hell of a time with it. Alan
Yeah,
is the only one that I know that has been able to get the blue polyps like really out, like protruding to like where they're like literally popping out.
yeah.
Mine would just peek. They were like a little turtle. Their little head would pop out, and they'd kind of look around, and they'd like, "Fuck you, I'm out of here." You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. But yeah, the jaw dropper is yeah, man, that one is whoo, it has my heart. And if you want to
Yeah.
try to grow the hardest coral, that gives me a heart attack thinking about it. Speaking of CRT and Alan, what's up? Is
Yeah.
his dad's coral, the Hung's rainbow. And
Mm,
you want to try a coral that'll
yeah.
test your skills. You look at it wrong and it like says, "All right, later." Yeah,
Yeah.
but anyway, it's all good fun. This is the kind of fun that we would have back in the day, just
Yeah.
just talking smack about corals and stuff. I enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you even mentioned you might have been talking to Mike or Rich the other day about the Andrew's pictures where he'd gotten sick of something and thrown it on next door's roof.
Oh my god, dude, that was so hilarious. Then he would put like these toys in his reef, and he would do
Yeah,
these
yeah.
like some of the craziest shit, man. I remember one day, like Dom, I shit you not, I went through probably 2 or 3 keyboards during like a 6 month span because every morning it was like religious. I had to drink my coffee and get on Reef Central because
Yeah.
like I said, man, you log on early, you can see what's going around, all the different time zones, so I'd
Mm.
catch up on what happened out in California on the West Coast in the morning, and of course, then I would see some of the commentary from Australia and whatnot pop up. But every time, and I would just spit my coffee out, and there'd be coffee on the screen, there'd be coffee all over the keyboard, and it was because some of the stuff that he did was just insanity.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
those little
yeah,
dolls. He used to
absolutely.
put little dolls in his reef,
Yeah,
and for Christmas he would put like little elves and like Christmas tree. Like you'd see an
yeah,
acro, and he would have something hanging on it.
yeah. You get the old. Oh, yeah. I can't remember what it was. If it was a toy or it was a ceramic thing. But yeah, you used to every Christmas get that Christmas tree and stick acros all over it like they were the decorations, and just grow that for a month, and then get rid of it again and put the acro frag somewhere else.
Oh, that's when you're so damn good at keeping
Mhm.
corals that you're just like, all right, let's do this.
Yeah.
We're gonna take a Christmas tree, and we're gonna take acros, and we're just gonna dangle them from it. And then we're gonna make sure that they're all opposite colors. And so we're gonna keep them colored up on that tree too. And then he was the kind of guy who would pull it off, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. That's it. Thanks for coming along, Kevin. It's nice,
oh, it's
nice,
our
nice for
pleasure.
nice for everyone to attend. It's good. I like it. I agree.
No, this is like, so this is what like the Reef Hangouts become. I gotta be honest with you, like I absolutely go back in time. I'm a nostalgic kind of guy.
Mm.
Listen
Yep.
to some of Jake's old work, and watch the way he interacted with Mark. And those guys were just the chemistry was like so spot on. And so
Yeah.
shout out, sorely missed Jake. And shout out to Reef Breeders. You guys, thank you for all
Mm.
that you've done over the years. What's up, Mo? Good to see Mo. Talk about acro head, 1,000 gallon
Yeah.
aquarium, bro. 1,000. So what is that
Yeah. I
in
do.
liters? What is that? 4,000 liters,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. 4,000, 5,000 liters or something like that. That's huge.
Yeah, it's crazy. What is that? What is that sign like? What am I missing on that sign for you? What is that? It looks like a cell tower for you. I don't know. Whatever.
Next to me
Rich just
here.
posted it. It's like a little
Oh,
cell tower. I don't know. Maybe it's an emoji or a symbol that I'm not used to because I'm old. Shit, I don't know. You
oh.
see what I'm talking about, right? Whatever that little symbol is. Anyway, I was just reading the comments there, but yeah, man. But Biggles definitely. Andrew definitely came through with some of the funniest commentary in the Reef community. Look, man, I was reading back on Joe. Speaking of back in the day, Joe's thread, and I
Mm.
was just like, remember Greg, old dude? He was
Yep.
so awesome, man. I love that dude. Do you remember Reef Mutt, Matt?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
You remember from Canada? I wonder
Yeah.
what
I
happened to him, dude. He was such a badass acro keeper.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember?
Well, that was one of the things. He was one of the guys that I think I sent messages on a couple of different forums just to see if they were still logging in. See if people are still around. If they get the email notification, they do. If they don't, they've clearly moved on with life. It is what it is. But yeah, I sent. I would have messaged probably a dozen people. I think Joe was even one of those people that I messaged on Reef Central just to see how everyone was going, see what people were still up to, see if anyone's still in the hobby. If they're not,
Yeah, man. I'm gonna try to link up with all those guys. Were great to chat with. Yeah, they were,
yeah,
man. Joe. It's it just amazing people, very genuinely helpful. Like really wanted to see you know guys succeed. So it was really it was just a different time, and we can get that back. We just got to piece this all back together ourselves. And that, I think that we will, I mean, we can utilize, like, we can utilize Instagram and have like the chat box that we have, where we got a bunch of us interacting and stuff like that. And you
Mm,
can still have fun like that.
yeah.
I am trying to get more activity going on my community page, but I suspect I need to go poke over to Humble Fish and go and really update, and like, it's just, what it's going to require. It's going to require typing and posting, and I'm just like, man. But those guys over there, I don't. How do I say this? Because I don't want to sound like the wrong way about the other, but I want to give them some love and some attention and share
Yeah.
and be a
Well,
part of
to
their
me,
community.
yeah, to me, the Humblefish feels a lot more like that sort of SBS Keepers Day. There's that sort of smaller community. There's those, people that aren't too pretentious. They don't take life too seriously. Like, Reef to Reef is a great resource, but a lot of those guys just take it all way too seriously. And
Yeah.
it's a hobby. Yeah, I get that some people it's also a business, but you keep your tank because you enjoy it, not because you feel the need to show off to people or one up at one another. Which
Well,
and aside from some other issues, is why I moved to Humblefish, and it's been, I mean, it's now my sort of home forum, so to speak.
there's some, I'm very in the spiritual realm, and you hear some talk about 3D and 5D and what that is and the different dimensions, the spiritual dimensions and whatnot. But I think we're heading into a newer era, newer age where, it really is symbolic of, like, some say it's the age of Aquarius, where it's more about sharing, more about like educating, more about
Mm,
teaching, and adapting to like old principles. For example, I think the younger generation right now, they want to feel what it's like to put their hands in the soil instead of watching a YouTube video or maybe seeing an Instagram reel. I think that some of the younger generation is really wanting to connect to sort of like, what is it like to, and I think that that's
mm,
changing, and I think we're seeing some of this ego being sort of like, where I think people now look at it and go, oh, you're another one of those people with an ego, and then just like, it's not that you have to be negative about it, it's just like, I'm just not interested. Like what you said, the
yeah.
pretentiousness, it's like, it's not gonna evolve in the new vision, I believe, of where it's all headed. So I feel like the Instagram sort of thing is, while it's good for showing photos and whatnot, I feel like society is going to start peeling away from sort of these things. I think the forum days, I think we're going to see a resurgence, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think so too, especially as as these companies continue to make their algorithms more aggressive to, only show certain people to certain things. I really like tattoos, for example. I have, a number of tattoos. I really like following a bunch of tattoo artists. And a lot of them these days are like, all right, well, I'm not doing Instagram anymore because Instagram's not showing my work to anyone. It's not showing designs that I'm doing. It's not showing work that I've completed. And so there's almost no point to me. Yeah. But these are people, that post consistently. They're doing all the right things that, the algorithm should be pushing them. But for whatever reason, it's
It's
not.
not.
And so they're getting sick of this shit. And I don't blame them. I think that these, Facebook, Instagram, all these sorts of things are only going to get worse the more aggressive these algorithms become. And it takes so much conscious effort to train those algorithms to show you what you want to be shown, that a lot of people aren't putting in that effort. I talk to people where they say, oh, well, my algorithm shows me all this weird stuff. Like, for example, I like watching TikTok. I enjoy it. I get a lot of, enjoyment out of that short form stuff. And people will say, oh, I get all these weird videos pop up every second video. I don't get any of that because I've been trained. Like, I consciously make an effort to train that algorithm. I say, I interact with the things that I like, and if I don't like something, I make sure that either you mark it as no, I don't like that, or you completely
Don't
close the app
recommend.
for 2 hours. And if you close, that's the other big thing. Facebook, when it starts showing me, weird ads, or it's putting all those suggested posts up, and I'm like, I don't want to see this because it's already such filled with such spam and nonsense. I just close the app. I close the website. I close it out for 2 or 3 hours. So the algorithm knows that if it shows me this sort of thing, I'm going to completely turn it off. And they don't want that. They want my eyes on the website. They want my eyes on the app because that's when I see the ads. That's when they get their revenue. So if it shows me something and then immediately upon interacting, saying I don't like this, I then completely close it out and it's gone from my access. That teaches that algorithm that if it shows me that, I'm not going to be participating in it. And so, a lot of people just scroll mindlessly. And so they get all this weird shit. They get all these, crazy things that crop up and, really out of field for what they're interested in. Because it is quite a lot. Like, and I fully, understand that it is a lot of effort to, maintain an algorithm. You've got to be an active participant in it. You've got to push that. And that's why I like the forums. There's not any of that nonsense. You've got your threads. You follow your threads. I check the new posts every couple of hours just to see if anything new's cropped up. Oh, there's a tank. There's a new a new tank journal that I haven't seen before. I'll click in that and see what it's like. You
Yeah, I'm
know.
100% in agreement with that. It's very nauseating for me to be on Instagram. And I was talking to my son today, and I was like, yeah, I'm up to like 1,500, and I like killed my account, a couple years ago. I was at almost 2,000, and I killed my account, and I started over again with the same similar handle and did it again.
Mm,
And I'm back up there again. And he's just like,
mm,
wow, that's great. And I'm like, yeah, it's a task. It's boring. I don't like it.
yeah,
I don't enjoy it. I mean, the only thing, like I said, I do enjoy seeing certain um acro keepers and certain there's other people that are hobbyists too that do some different stuff that I find very
mm,
nice too, and it might not even be acropora related, so it's
yeah,
intriguing, right? I like seeing something different, but when it's like riches, and like I love it, man, because like I said, he puts information, and he's very kind of has some critical aspects of what he's doing, instead of just putting a picture and just letting everybody comment to figure out what it is. He goes ahead and talks about what it is and what his strategy for par or whatever is. I think that's clever, and it's niche, and I think it's something he should do, because when you have that kind of acro collection, it can get away from you real quick. But if you have it categorized in a platform, I think it helps it, and then people can, of
yeah.
course, see the stages and the growth stages, and that's why forums I thought were really clever too. So
Yeah, I
there
mean,
you have it.
especially when you
I'm with
consider
you.
that. Well, yeah, when you consider that Rich also has multiple tanks running different methodologies, different lights, it is really good having that documentation, that sort of chronicling of those things and how different things work, and how it changes over time. And yeah, I completely agree. I also, yeah, Mo, I remember when Photo Bucket changed there from a
Oh
free website to
God,
you had to pay to get all your uploads, and it just broke all of
bro,
the forums
my
because
heart is
everyone
still
used Photo
broken.
Bucket. Yeah,
My heart is still broken. I kind of want to like just go on Reef Central and find my old thread. I think I was like 80 or 120 pages. I
yeah,
had a thread that was so long and active with just so many photos, and I'm just
yeah.
like, it's all gone, and it's just like, and it was that photo bucket thing, and shortly thereafter I think we touched on it with I can't remember who it was. I think it might have been Joe who I was talking to,
Mm,
and it was
yeah,
shortly after that photo bucket thing, and boom, like everybody dipped over to Reef to Reef from there. But
yeah,
yeah,
because you
so
could directly
Alan.
upload the photos to them.
Mhm.
That was a big reason, I think, was Reef Central not quite getting quickly on board with that, and
Oh, their
it was
timing was impeccable. They
yeah,
must have been trolling or something, like they
yeah,
not trolling, but they must have been lurking, watching what was going on, and because the
mm,
timing almost seemed too perfect. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to cast shade. I'm just saying, like, it did seem almost too perfect. But I was a big Zeo head, man. I spent a lot of time on that
Mm,
forum. That was
yeah.
my baby right there. I spent a lot of time learning about Zeovit and diving into it. And I really still to this day think um, I think some of the Zeovit tanks that I've seen are probably some of the most insane tanks I've ever looked at.
Yeah.
So while some people don't like Zeo and Zeo products and stuff like that, I still I can't speak unkind of them because almost every product I've ever worked with from them, I've really liked. So, um, but
I'm
yeah,
right
man,
there
I
with you.
spent.
The 50-gallon cube that I ran back in the day, that was a Zeo system. I
Oh, was
loved
it?
Zeo. I still love Zeo. If we had the access to it and it wasn't as expensive because of the exchange rate and shipping it halfway around the world, I'd still be running Zeo. Like fully
Yeah.
honestly, I would go back to it in a heartbeat. But it's basically impossible to get here and it's so expensive. When you're shipping, a kilo bag of the Zeo stones from Germany and you're buying, 5 to 10 of those at a time, like the shipping cost on that's, almost triple what the stones are worth.
Well, and it's like this, man. Like when we talk about it in agriculture too. It's expensive, and when people are bottling, you're paying for RODI to ship essentially in a lot of
Mm.
cases, And when you start looking at that, like I'll never, like if I were at what Joe and I talked about this last time, I would never buy, like, for example, calcium carbonate snow. I would never buy coral snow from Zeovid or AF build again. I mean, that's the same thing, right? It's
Yeah.
a calcium carbonate snow. It's all it is a flocculant. I know Sonny did a really great write up on Reef to Reef about quality, water quality, or something like that associated. But truly, spiking it with a little Zeoback is a masterpiece. But that was
Mm.
something that was going on back on Zeobit. We used to take Coral Snow, Zeoback, and Zeozyme and mix it together, and that was you probably remember it was a
Yeah.
way of handling cyanobacteria.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes, they were very secretive and it was very, hush hush and secret squirrels about all of their products and what was what was in them and how they worked and all of that sort of thing. But and yeah, I agree that there should have been a bit more transparency, but the system worked. You look at some of those tanks, you look at their big, they had that monster display tank that was like a football field of just acro colonies that were just every color that you could possibly imagine. And this is 20 years ago. This is early 2000s.
Oh, you're welcome, bro. We appreciate you stopping by. Yeah,
No.
and if you look at Alan's tank, like seriously,
Mm.
dude, if you just suspend your, just look at it and take the LED away for a second and just kind of capture it. I really feel like I'm looking at a Zeovit tank when I look across
Mm.
his tank. Um, he's got those colors. There's this little thing like that little metallic thing, or there's just something that happens. And Rich has it too. All Troy, they all have it.
Mm.
But I think it's the way Alan's perched his corals. You see it really looks
Yeah.
Zeovit like they're all
Yeah.
very similar. Like it almost has like a little bit of that Japanese influence. Remember
Yeah.
those were the best systems of the oh my god, dude. You remember the Japanese aquariums, dude, with
Yeah.
the
Some of them were.
metal halides, like 4 or 5 150 spots, and they would highlight a specific acro, and you just be like,
Yeah.
oh, that shit used to get me all excited, man. Uh-oh, I lost Dom. There he is.
Nope. I'm back. Don't know
But
what that
yeah, I
was.
used to get all excited over those the way their corals would all like it was almost like they plugged them in all as like mariculture, all like about like this
Mm.
big, and they were just like perfectly balanced throughout the system, and then all these little individual spotlights all over the tank to highlight different regions of the tank. Oh, it was
Yeah.
just so sick. I really, really, really love that style of tanks and that minimalism bonsaiing look. It really
Mm.
got me. So yeah, man. So what else is going on, dude? How's life treating you over there? Other than, kind of things a little expensive for the hobby.
I did have to catch out, so I've caught out and removed the fox face that was in the tank
Uh-oh.
because he decided that he didn't want to get along with one of the butterflies anymore, and so
Oh.
the butterfly takes priority. So I caught him and took him back to the shop. I think it was last weekend. So the tank is much more peaceful now that he's gone. And I think I probably won't add any more utilitarian type fish. I mean, I don't. This will be my controversial hot take. I don't actually like tangs. I don't. They don't do anything for me. I don't find them interesting. I don't kind of like the look of them. So I'm not gonna. I don't like them. So I'm not gonna add them to the tank. Foxface was good, but I think the tank's probably just a touch too small for them. So I can't really add another. I'm not going to add another one. So at this stage, I think I'll just probably stick with the good old tuxedo type urchins and let them do all of that sort of cleanup and algae
Hmm.
control. Leave it at that, and then just add other fish. Could do it differently, but I'll do what I like because I get the most enjoyment out of doing it that way. I'm a big convert on the urchins. That was something I only added in the last probably 3 or 4 months. I think it might have been after Christmas or something, but love the urchin. That I don't know why I didn't add them sooner. Just been an
Which ones
absolute
did
fan.
you get?
I think it's the blue tuxedo urchins.
The ones that pick
Um,
stuff up?
yeah, they do a little bit of the collecting, a little bit. It hasn't really picked much up aside from like some bits of coralline and that sort of thing. And they're captive raised as well, so you can get them at like that big.
Oh,
And so
wow.
so getting them that small, they can get into everything, and
Oh, hell yeah.
that's been a fantastic addition. Really love that. So I'll probably just stick with those because there's not really much to worry about with them. He doesn't really bulldoze or knock anything over. All the acros are still in the same spots that they've always been. So he just sort of cruises around and does his own thing. And then the only other two changes I made is I'm skimming a bit wetter these days. So I turn the
Okay.
skimmer up uh, probably 20-30%. So it's a much wetter skim now, just for something different, just to see if it makes a difference. I think when I first turned it up, I think I filled the skimmer cup within about 12 hours. So that's not just completely overflowing it. That was just it was just pulling out so much more stuff. So I suppose that's been a good change. I mean, I clean the glass now once. Well, I mean, once every couple of weeks. So I think it's made a difference for that. And then I finally got the elk dosing set up on the KH Guardian as well. So I don't have to worry about manually dosing elk anymore. I'm not doing an Andrew these days.
I love dosing by hand, man. Like I use a little bubble magus doser, but I don't mind dosing by hand. I guess it just
Oh,
depends on, for me, I look at it like gardening, like every day there's something that has to get done. I have to pull weeds
yeah.
every day. I have this every day. It's a part of doing things. So yeah, I guess it doesn't bother me so much. That's why I always really loved probiotic and little drops of this and
Yeah.
drops of that. That was my style of reefing because I had the time and would put the time aside for that kind of meticulous dosing. But nowadays, I'm just like whatever. I just treat it like a garden, just
Yeah.
like what it
I
is.
mean,
But
I'm much the same. I'm happy. I enjoy that manual dosing. I enjoy, doing those little bits and pieces. But it was just a case of, I've got the KH Guardian there that's testing the elk every 4 hours or so, and that has a doser built into it. So it can
Mhm.
it tests and then it can add, the elk solution to make up whatever it's tested
That's
at to
nice.
get to your set point. And I just thought, well, it's already there. It already functions. I may as well may as well use it and have a more consistent elk level as well. I was sort of swinging from between 7 and 7.5 over a day or two. and that was manual dosing. And or if for whatever reason I was busy and I just didn't have the time, it might drop down to 6.8. And so there was a bit more swinging going on, and I just sort of thought, what, it's all there, it's easy,
Yeah.
it's regularly tested. I sort of check it once a week, once every 2 weeks, just to make sure it's still not going crazy or anything. But just having that elk be more consistent, I think, is probably a good thing for what I'm looking for. I think some of the acros probably didn't like some of that sort of continual swinging of half a DKH to three quarters of a DKH. But yeah, everything else I sort of manual dose. Like, I'm not really dosing any calcium or magnesium. I do some potassium iodine drops, and then pretty much everything else is managed by the auto water changes.
Right.
I sent off an ICP. I want to say, I think I got the results back last week or the week before, and like literally everything was green. There wasn't anything. And I think my calcium was slightly low, but everything else was pretty much green. Yeah, there was
And
literally no recommendation.
that's the water service delivery, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I've got on the other side of this wall here, I've got a 1,000 liter IBC container in the garage, and I think it's 3 or 4 months, the guy rolls up with his truck and fills it up with 1,000 liters of fresh natural salt water that's been collected in the bay in Melbourne. And that just does its own thing. I don't even have to worry about it. I don't really think about it. I keep an eye on the salinity just to make sure it's all okay. And one of the pumps isn't getting out of whack, because if the input is putting more in than the output's taking out, then obviously your salinity is going to start to go up, and vice versa. So the easy way to check that that's all still running smoothly is, what's the salinity doing? So I test that semi regularly. But aside from that, I don't really, like, as I said, like, I know I said it jokingly in the chat the other day, but genuinely I tested the calcium and magnesium for the first time in like 5 or 6 years, a couple of weeks ago, just because I was curious to see where it was at. But it was pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
I'll let the acros, if the acros are unhappy, they'll tell me, and then I can do something about it.
Yeah, there needs to be, well, not doesn't need to be, but it would be nice to see observation sort of being the predominant leader of reef keeping again, where you really are looking at your reef and you're studying your reef. You're spending the time analyzing top downs every day, things like this, so that you can notice the nuances, and then you know you could then go and test. And what that does is it then tells you the story. And each time the story is being told, you learn more and more and more, because you're reading a new story. And I that's the way I've kind of looked at it over time. Is I'd like to make the observation, then test, and then see, was the test able to validate what my observational suspicion was. In most cases, it's pretty damn close, particularly with nutrients and whatnot. I'm a big fan of glass algae. Alan and I get all giddy over that green filament algae that builds up on the glass, and it's building up every other day on mine. And it's like, back in the day, that told me my phosphates were not too high, but not too low. They're absolutely perfect. And so every 2 to 3 days, a good brushing and a good, you see that stuff cloud and release from the bristles, and you could tell it's like, it releases, and you can just see the acros. They really get stimulated when you brush that stuff into the reef. So I think, there are ways that, I think there's just ways that we can get the observation before we go on all these wild goose chases. You know what I
Yeah, I
mean?
mean, I would absolutely. I mean, if when the right sort of option becomes available, I will probably get a tester that does, calcium, magnesium, nitrate, phosphate, and just have it there. But that's not necessarily for I need it to be able to reef properly. That's just I'm curious to know what the levels are doing. I'd like to have that data that's there that says that this is what the trends are. Does it go up? Does it go down? Does this correlate to that? It's not. I don't need it to be able to keep acros. It's almost totally separate to that. It's
Yeah,
just it's just
Alan's
having
talking
that
about
information.
Aqua Wiz out there. I wanted to say shout out real quick. Yes, Joe said Zeovit. The colors were crazy. Yep, they were. Mark, what's up? How you doing, sir? Good to see you. All these man. Some amazing aquarists. Blessed to have both on the other side of me and as well as in the comments. So it really gives me good vibes here. Yeah, the Aqua Wiz is definitely a game changer,
Mm.
especially for data loving nerds like Alan, especially. And his eye is clever. He's got a really good eye, and I'm Joe, of course. I mean, I don't need to say anymore. He's been around for a long time, but that having that equipment to then validate that suspicion really is a game changer because it can really tell you
Mm.
about what your anecdotal observations are and what's doing what. And yeah, it's a good tool. Yeah, so I'm just learning through these guys, but
Yeah,
what
the
else?
Aquawiz looks like a great bit of kit in terms of no reagents, testing that whatever you want to do and having it cycle on. Yeah, it seems like a great bit of kit. I was just unfortunate timing. I got the KH Guardian about
Mhm.
6 or 12 months before it released here in Australia.
Oh, he
So
said he got an ice fire.
yeah.
Well,
I think
yeah,
I saw the picture the other. I think was it yesterday or the day before? I saw a picture of or a
is it
reel
an
or a story or
Aussie?
something.
Did he get it from Australia or is it a Fiji?
I don't know, but it looked pretty good. It looked like it was definitely happy.
Yeah, man. All of I'd love those ice fire echinatas, dude.
There's
But
so nice.
Mark's got the ice cube into the fire. Hell yeah. Oh, it's Aussie. Yeah. Well, you know what, Alan, man, that's the one, dude. So if you can keep that thing going and you can keep it, get it to encrust down and get it to lock in and you start growing new branches, man, you got my holy grail blessing because that's a hard coral to keep. But he's got the jaw dropper right now, which is
Mm,
painful for me to try. So yeah, I won't
yeah.
even talk about that one anymore.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
But yeah,
it's good to see you.
aside from that,
What was that?
I was going to say, aside from that, there's nothing too
Are you
exciting
there?
going on.
Yeah, a
Oh,
little refreshing. Can you still hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
It didn't get low.
No. It just sort
Okay.
of, you
No,
disappeared for a
it
second.
normally, yeah, normally like the other person can't hear me or I can't hear them, and then they have to
Oh,
jump back in.
yeah.
But so Alan's
No.
got the Aussie Economic. Now, do you see them a lot over in the shops, or is it
I
just kind
think
of like
they come in like fits and droves. So, you won't see them for 6, 12 months. And then all of a sudden for 3 months straight, everyone will have them. And so I'm not sure if it's a collection area or it's what
probably?
the reason is. But yeah, it's just that the you can get them, yeah, and they're sort of always around, but they sort of only get collected in sort of certain periods. So you see them for a few months and then you won't see them for a few months and then they come back and yeah. But then, yeah, we pretty much always get one. Someone's always got a decent sized piece of it.
Yeah, they're in the shallow water. Usually the waves like in the
Mm.
tidal zones. Usually in the wave like the wave zones. That's why the plankton and everything's just totally stirred up. That's why they thrive. But yeah, he's right, man. Yeah, so I think one would look killer, like right up underneath that 250 watt radium.
Yep.
I can't think of a better bulb to light that coral up with. It would probably look insane.
Yeah. They will definitely be an addition for the tank. I can tell you that much. Don't worry.
Hell yeah.
I love them as well. They look great. I mean, yeah, all those sort of fine branch. They're the types of acros I really like. Are those really finely branched? The smooth skins, your echinatas, those sorts of things. Really, yeah. They get me going. They're my favorites.
Mine is still the everlasting search for the Dustin's Deep Water, which is thought to be a simplex, purple simplex. Yeah, I had a chance at it, and I went with the Hawkins Echinata like a dumbass. It was sitting right next to it. There was like a pearlberry. It was back when ORA. Do you
Yep.
remember when they did the big release?
Yeah.
They had
Yep.
Phil's Green Granulosa, Hawkins Echinata, the pearlberry, and Dustin's Deepwater. Literally, like it was like they were releasing another one every month or something like that. And
Mm,
ORA was just slaying it back in the day,
yeah.
man. They were killing it back in the day. Satanic or
Yeah.
Christian? I'm neither. Like, come on, like that's yeah, that's weird. But yeah, so but yeah, man, like freaking yeah. I'm sorry, I lost my thought there with the satanic or Christian. That's a weird question.
That's yeah, it's a bit left of center. That one's a bit odd. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just yeah. I mean, I like those sort of spindly things. You know, those pieces that I got that didn't they shipped poorly, and so you know it's a Jacqueline type looking
Okay.
thing. You know, whether it does well or it doesn't, we'll see. It's still got most of its flesh. It's a little. There's not much polyp extension, so I'm still holding my
Hmm.
breath. And there's this this front frag's got some tissue on it still on the back one. I think this will be a nice sort of really pale green piece. But we'll see what they do. You know.
Alan saying feed the tank.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
swear,
Yeah.
Alan, you're gonna need to hire somebody to feed your tank, man, the way you like it fed. He's he's gonna have to hire instead of an auto doser, like hire somebody to sit there. Well, he probably does it himself. He's probably like I don't know. Alan is figuring it out somehow. Who was
Yeah.
it that had the new God, who was I interviewing? Was it Mike? Yeah, it is Mike who has the new refrigerated feed, like the dosing
Ah.
feed that's
Yeah.
refrigerating. Yeah, that
Yeah.
is
That's cool.
that's a game changer right there for
Mm,
sure. If that works,
yeah. Yeah.
because he was saying it doesn't clog in the line, it doesn't like get bad
Mm.
in the line or nothing. So I don't know how it works, man. I'm gonna have to get Mike on
I
again
think
and
I have.
talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they have some sort of back flush or flush system that you put fresh water through it, fresh salt water through it, or tank water through it, so it doesn't. So you don't end up with like bits of mysis sitting in a tube for several hours, getting all funky. Yeah, I
Yeah, he
do.
said,
I do. I think I do need to sit down and just have a look at because we don't, as Alan's saying, we don't. Part of the difficulty here is trying to find the right foods and some of the coral foods here because we don't have a lot of access to them. I think we get some. You can get some polyp lab and there's some bottled ones, but it's like you're talking about the continuum stuff, which isn't really the best. So I do need to sit down and have a look and see what there is, what I might like to try out and see what'll work.
well, I can tell you it does what that test I did worked and it worked really well, but I'm not going to continue it for now. But I actually took
Mm.
a dosing tube and went into my skimmer cup and was lifting skimmate and dosing it 24 milliliters of skim
Yeah,
juice to my reef a day. And corals loved it, dude. Like
yeah.
seriously, they loved it. You'd be very surprised, but I know the system will work, but then what I thought about, like honestly, this is I was like, well, why don't I just skim dry?
Mm. Yeah, yeah.
Let's take a mechanic offline here. This is too much work. It's ultimately what I decided. I'm like, I'll just turn the skimmer down a little bit and I won't collect as much skim and keep more food in the system. So ultimately, it's probably kind of having the same effect. I just wanted to try it to see if I could kill
Yeah.
my acros, and I didn't. So that worked.
Yeah,
I do
yeah.
those things. I'm known for
Life
like
foods.
5.1 DKH one month and 11.8 the next month, that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Still having
yeah,
corals live through the experience.
yeah.
It just proves they can handle these shifts, and like Alan was talking about these tidal zones and whatnot. the parameters are shifting about, the minerals are shifting about, the salinity is shifting about,
Mm.
the pH, it's getting aerated, micro bubbles, it's getting all of it when the waves crash, you know what I mean? Um,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so
yeah. I'm not sure.
go ahead.
Sorry, you go. No, no, you go.
No, I was just saying, I think they're probably a little more, they're used to a little bit more inconsistency in terms of what we would consider kind of like what we always thought was the holy grail of steady parameters and everything else. I think
Yeah.
if we were to spend all day out on the reef fishing and whatnot and taking tests while we were doing it every couple of hours, we might be surprised of what some of the levels might reveal. Um,
Mm.
you know what I mean? From an alkalinity and a calcium standpoint, I'll bet you those parameters shift all day long, especially
But yeah,
nutrients.
yeah, especially when you're talking about, tidal tide changes, incoming versus outgoing, you're talking about your peak tides and those sorts of things. I imagine that, yeah, especially as you start to get to some of those, coastal zones and closer to, where there's rivers and estuaries, the change would definitely be fairly significant, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I've taken rocks out like and left them outside under the sun for I don't know 20 minutes, scrubbing algae off of them with acros and put them right
Mm.
back in the tank. I just take a little pitcher of water from the tank and then I pour it over it, put them back in, and on we go. And never skip a beat. Now, the only
Yeah.
problem with doing that for me is I've just had my aptasia just blow up because of all the rock scrubbing. So
Yeah.
now I need nudibranch. So I'm gonna have to reach out to Alan because I think Alan's messing around with them. At least he was. But Matt and I, my buddy Matt and NSB Reese, were talking about it on the phone the other day, and I was talking
Mm.
about aphasia with him, and I was like, yeah, I think I'm gonna have to get some of them. And he was saying Top Shelf has them. And he's like, they're the
Yeah.
only ones that he really knows of right now that are actually keeping them on the regular in stock. And I was like, yeah, it seems like it would probably be easy to keep them. He's like, dude, they just rip through aptasia so fast
Yeah.
that you just can't grow aptasia at the rate that these things are growing. So I don't know
Yeah.
how Alan's able to do it. I'm sure he's got something worked out with the community where they're maybe moving them from one system to another, or maybe he's got an in on somebody who's got aptasia infestations or something. But yeah, I mean, they're probably, as far as I've known, like what I've used, peppermint, copper bands, or any of the aptasia, Joe's juice, or any of these things along the way. I don't know of anything that's ever worked better than the nudibranchs for me. That those things are
Yeah.
killer.
Yeah, I think the big thing with the peppermints is that there's only specific species of peppermint that actually cares about aptasia, and so
Mhm.
people don't actually pay attention to what species of peppermint they're getting, and then they get the wrong species and they put it in. They go, well, my peppermints didn't work. And it's like, well, yeah, that's because you didn't actually get the right species that actually targets them. Because I've had aptasia. I mean, I don't, not in this tank because I keep certain butterflies that just absolutely smashed the aptasia. But in my little nano at work, I added a couple of little peppermints, and they took care of it. Within a day or two, and they were just gone. Never had them come back. I just fed the peppermint. They stayed happy for years.
Yeah, yeah, it's I don't know. I have you ever heard of? Do you remember back in the day? Do you remember camelback shrimp scrubbing?
Yes.
Do you remember scrubbing? To where people were purposely bringing in their wilds and their maricultures, and they would take the camelback, which look like the peppermint. They get confused with them,
Mm.
and they'll actually eat the acros. But what you would do is you would take the acro and you would put it in there, and they damn near strip the acro down to nothing. And as long as you were able to get them out in a certain amount of time, you would get all the pests off them. They would literally
Yeah.
decimate like everything on the flatworms or any kind of pods or anything. They just decimated everything. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Okay.
really neat. I don't know if you remember that, but that was probably like
No, I don't.
back in 2006, 8, somewhere around that time frame, way back. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was like because there's people that would have like hundreds of them in like a little 20-gallon little tank with a little hang-on filter,
Oh.
and they would take the colony at like a wild and just drop it in there for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something, and they would just attack and just destroy anything on it, and then you just take it out
Yeah.
and and you put it in another tank.
Yeah, I do think I remember something about that. The small tank with the hang on back and the massive shrimp. Yeah, that's something about that rings a bell.
Yeah, it was really it was on the SPS form, I think, because it was relevant to like pestation, like pests and how to
Mm,
handle that type of situation. And yeah, so anyway, he said he's got his cultures going for 10 years. That's incredible, Alan. I mean, like
yeah, that's
beauty branks are
unreal.
not easy. I know that my buddy Matt was telling me, he was like Tidal Gardens tried it, a couple different places tried it,
Mm,
and it's just I think it was is having enough aptasia. But if you're in a good enough reef zone, like up in the northeast of the United States, their network, like up where Rich and
mm,
Joe and all, there's just a concentration of like a lot of reef keepers. And I know Chicago, out where Allen near that area is pretty big. And then of course you've got Orlando where I'm near is another
yeah,
big market. So you might
yeah.
be able to get away with having hobbyists coming in and out and having aptasias in and out to where you could sustain them. But I just think it would be hard if you were to try to like have a spot. You would have to have like literally several different stages of tanks.
Mm.
And I don't know how you would even do it. But kudos to you, Alan, for keeping it rolling, dude.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, nicely done. Yeah, lots of predators. Yeah.
Mm.
I'm sure, Mark, you remember that back in the day, the camelback shrimp scrubber. It was pretty interesting, but yeah, because that's when people were confusing those with peppermint shrimps. You remember how they kind of look just like the shrimp?
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, so what's going
Mm.
on? You said it. Okay. Yeah, he's got six
Yeah.
systems. There you go. That's why. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's the other thing, some of Alan's earlier comments, getting live food here is a bit difficult. There's not many people doing live food anymore these days. I don't think anyone's producing live brine. I think I know of maybe one or two shops that do some of the mysids and the mysis and that sort of thing, but there's not really a whole lot of it. We don't have regular access to it, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, I use Larry's Reef Frenzy
Mm.
exclusively. That's all I feed because it's
Yep.
got so much shit in it. And then what I do is I take it out on the cutting board and I'll take a block of about an inch by an inch piece and then I'll cut it super fine with a chef knife and I'll cut it
Yep.
like I'll mince it real super fine and then I'll take it and I'll put it in a little pitcher with tank water and I'll put like a little glass, like Pyrex glass pitcher, and then I go in and I feed it to the tank 2 or 3 times a day, and then I'll put it back in the fridge, and then I go and I pour
Yep.
a little more in there, and it doesn't seem, I go 2 or 3 days on a little square of feeding the fish that way, so
Yeah.
to me it brings really good coloration to the corals. I'm a big fan of like whatever you're feeding your fish is like the nutrition that's passed on to the corals. So the
Mm.
higher quality in, the higher quality out, and the higher quality out, higher quality into the corals, So
Yeah.
it's sort of kind of the way I've always wrapped my mind around coloration. I've always been fortunate to have deeply saturated colors like this right
Yeah.
here. And
Yes.
I've always wanted pastels, so you go figure. I
Yeah.
always wanted zeolite colors, and I was always blessed with the super, saturated colors. And a lot of
Yeah.
people always liked them, but I always felt that the way I fed my fish was a representation of my coral coloration. So that's how
Mm.
I've stuck to it all these years. Right now I use Coral Vitalizer, which is
Yep.
like a fermented lipid fatty acid, highly nutritious coral feed. And then when I run through these little, those little bottles, right? Those little 10 ml bottles, I'm gonna go to Allen's food. It's what I've landed
Yep.
on as a supplement. So
Yeah.
I'm just waiting to go through the KZ. But Reef Roids, I do a little bit of Reef Roids for the A cans once a week. What else? You know what's really good is that, have you tried that? Well, you probably haven't because your restrictions. Reef, have you ever heard of that?
Yes, I have heard of that. I'm not sure if we can get that here or not. I don't think I've ever had a look to see if we can. We might.
It's
It might be available here.
it's a dry bacteria, so that might go through. Do the dry ones tend to go through better than the live cultures? I
Yeah.
would
Oh, yeah.
imagine so.
Yeah. Yeah. No. No. If you're getting dried or dormant stuff, that's a lot easier than
Right.
some of the live
Yeah, because
bacterias.
it's definitely got a bacteria source in it, for sure. I don't know how much. It has spirulina in it. I know that for a fact because I can tell by the coloration of it. It's got sort of that. You can't miss what spirulina looks like. I mean, it's got
Yeah.
that beautiful green blue color,
Mm,
unmistakable. Um, but yeah, I've used the Reef and I really like it. I like to mix
yeah.
it with the Rods Reef, and then I'll take a turkey baster and I'll baste my A cans and my hammers.
Yeah.
They love it, bro.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's the other thing. Yeah. I think probably some food would probably do good now that I've started to add some more corals. I don't really have a huge fish load, so there's not really that nutrient that's coming from just feeding the fish. Um, so yeah, I think the tank would probably benefit from a decent feeding. Whether it's one of those dry products or yeah, as Alan's mentioned, baby brine's probably the better or easier live food option I'd probably have access to
Mhm.
here.
It's the particle size is probably small enough for the acro feeders to
Mm,
grab onto, especially millies and things like that. Maybe not your finer corals so much, but
yeah.
definitely them ones that are the heavier consumers. I have some like, dude, I had the leading edge of one of my corals the other day snag a piece of mysis and didn't want to let go of it, and it was like trying to process it. So some of these
Yeah.
corals are just like, some of these acros can be really like freaking.
Oh
They're
yeah. They'll grab onto something and yeah, they'll give it a whirl if they can. If they can't, they'll try it anyway.
hell yeah. So man, yeah, but so yeah, I'm just yeah. Hopefully, you guys. I don't know. I think with you, I would probably lean on the seafood market, man.
Mm,
Maybe as a diversity, maybe get a little bit of oyster, a little bit of lobster, like just little pieces and cut it up real fine and make like a little mix. And then maybe once a week or, a couple times a week, you could add a little bit of variety that way.
yeah.
Might be a way to get around, not getting access to, some of these other higher quality frozen foods, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. We have such fantastic access to live stuff, whether that's mussels or it's
Mhm.
scallops with the roe, oysters as well. Those sort of crustacean-y mollusk type foods. We've got plenty of access to them. Pippies, all sorts of small clams, and those sorts of things.
Yeah, you said you have a butterfly in there, right?
Yep.
Yeah, they probably love clams, like clam
Oh,
strips and
absolutely.
stuff like that. So yeah, you could probably benefit pretty good on that. Yeah, I've always been more into like a live or a frozen, a higher quality, more nutritious food over pellets and flakes and
Hmm.
things of this nature. It's just I've never used them. My fish have I've fed frozen literally since I got in the hobby. I've tried a
Yep.
couple different pellets and flakes along the way, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I'm both worlds. I like both of them. So you can see this is the variety that I feed in terms of dried, you're talking all sorts of flakes,
Oh, wow, you got a
pellets.
lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah, yeah. So rather than take the approach of, I'll feed one or two products, it's everything. I'll throw, that's what almost 10 different products just in dry food, and I rotate through them frequently. It's never the same feed twice in a row. It's always a bit of this or a bit of that. Managed to score some new radiums, which was nice.
Hell yeah. So what was your recent test on nitrates and phosphates?
Was probably that's a good question. I did write it down. Let me have a look. What did we get for the last one? So last test looks like phosphate was, I think it was about 0.07 ish, and the nitrates were 15 from the looks of it. But I'm also atrocious with those, color change, pick the color tests. I, they all look the same. I mean, I'm not colorblind, so I don't have that issue to deal with. But it all looks the same to me. So I hazard a guess. It's probably in the range of zero point 0.1 to 0.05, and 10 to 20 nitrates.
Like for me, yeah, I could tell, like, for example, like this coral right here, if you look above my head, you can see that the
Mm.
polyp on the axial coralite that's like kind of like a nice purplish color.
Yeah.
Usually like the when I see the polyps becoming really fancy looking, like they're evolving, like that's when I can tell like nutrients are dead spot on. It seems like the polyps will actually color up as well. And so when I start seeing things like that, that's when I start getting really
Mm.
excited, and I start thinking
Yeah.
I'm like I'm hitting in a new growth stride, or something's really
Yeah.
happening that's really good in the system. So a lot of it's just through observation for me, but
Yeah.
again, I only have 12, maybe 13 acros in the system, so I
Hmm.
don't really have a
I
whole
mean,
lot.
yeah, I'm in similar boat at the moment with, there's not a huge amount in my tank, so I'm not too stressed about how everything's going. There's not too much of a load. I know that, with the automatic water changes happening every hour, that there's realistically not going to be any huge swings in anything. You're not talking coral loads like Alan or Rich or Mike or any of those
Mhm.
guys where, if the corals decide they want to uptake something, they can bottom it out within, an hour or something. Yeah, we're certainly not having that issue at the moment.
I mean, I would almost be afraid to miss a feeding on Mike or Alan's tank for
Mm.
any of these guys' tanks,
Yeah.
man. They're so dense with coral that that it's literally a living filter at this point, and I think that's just a cool place to get your tank, man. That means you've
Mm.
got big corals, big colonies, a
Yeah.
lot of mass, a lot of coral mass. To me, that's the end game for me, So I kind of want to take this little nano and make it full. And so yeah, I don't even know that in 2026 I'm going to do the upgrade. I was thinking I'd do it this year, but I
Yeah.
think one more year with this nano, maybe another year and a half, 2 years at the most, and
Yep.
I'll have coral everywhere outside the water, and then that'll look cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Absolutely.
I can say that I did a nano, and I did a nano mixed reef, and I was able to do it all together in one little reef, and then I'll
Yeah.
have satisfied my desire for the tough part of the hobby. I think that's what compels us to come to the Acropora, man. It's
Mm.
that challenge.
Yeah, there's levels to it as well. It's not like, with LPS or those sorts of things that kind of, it's either they grow or they don't grow. The colors don't really change too much. Whereas with acros, it's, how many nth degrees do you want to go to in terms of coloration and polyp extension, or, whatever your metric is for what you determine your success is. Where do you want to take that? And with SBS and acros in particular, I think there's just so much more room for that experimentation and testing and fine tuning.
Yeah, and it's cool because you got guys, all these guys too, are really changing things too, from looking at it from a millipora and the way they feed
Mm.
versus, you're almost starting to get to a point where, you might even start to see species specific coral
Yeah.
tanks, in the future, and maybe seeing somebody trying to lock in like a milli dominated system, or, that was something I was thinking about doing at one time, was like a milli dominant system. I think
Oh
that'd be
yeah.
kind of
Well,
cool.
I think it was Leonardo's reef. He had, what was it, the Formosa forest or something? That
Yeah.
was all. Yeah, that was all. I think one species or one or two species. That was awesome. That was such a cool tank.
I liked his Apagon Reef. That was one of my favorites
Yes.
too. With
Yeah,
all those
that was a
all
great
those
one.
cardinals that he had. He had like
Mm,
12 or 15 different types of cardinals, like these little glass cardinals that were little small ones, and everything just kind of dancing in the acros. I'm like, oh,
mm,
it was just such a nice touch, you know.
yeah.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
is a
yeah,
Jedi
Leo is a
master.
bit of a
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
Alan is
looking
too,
forward to
man. Like you get Alan, all these guys in the same room, man. We should, that it's great because a lot of them have been around forever. And Alan mentioned
mm,
earlier he was just a kid back in the day, but dude, it was funny because Alan used, I don't know if you know this, Alan used to like literally he was the one doing all of the promoting for Hunk, his dad. He was the one doing all
yeah.
of the social media on the forums and stuff. And he was just a young kid, doing all this
Yeah.
stuff. So yeah, I mean, you talk about experience and knowledge. I mean, the kid is,
Mm,
I mean, he's not a kid anymore, but he's just been doing this shit forever,
yeah.
and then you got the likes of, just everybody here in the comments, and it's like, wow, some of the really good people that grow in Acropora. So I'm very
Mm,
grateful for everybody, Mark, Casey Aquatics, Dom, you being here, Rich, Troy, Lee, Alan, everybody,
yeah.
everybody that stopped in, man. It's just, it really gets me excited about, you know, this part of the hobby again. And
Mm.
like I said, I'm going to make my way over to Humblefish here in the next few days and say hello to everybody and sorry for being absent for so long because I'm sure people like you are gonna get on my
Oh yeah, don't worry. Don't worry. That post will
I
be
already
there.
know it's
I'll be the
coming
first
from
one
you,
there to make
bro.
fun of you.
I already know it's coming from you. I already know. As soon as I post something, you're gonna be on my ass, but it's
Oh
all
yeah,
for good
yeah.
reason. It's all for
Yeah,
good reason.
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Well, I'm really stoked for your tank, man, and where it's at,
Yeah.
and I'm really happy that you took the time out of your schedule. Thank you
No, of
to
course.
your family for allowing you to break away, whether it be your
I
animals,
think Georgia's
wife,
upstairs
whomever.
watching.
Yeah, look, it all matters. So I appreciate your time. That's the one commodity that's most important in my world.
Mm.
So I appreciate that.
No, of
And yeah,
course.
we'll do this again. And hopefully next time we
Absolutely.
do it, maybe later this year, we'll catch back up and then we'll see that tank thriving with acros. And
Yep.
yeah, I'm just really stoked for you. Do you anything else you want to go through? Anything on your mind? Anything you want to get out there? We can do it. We don't have to to go by a script here. If we want to, we
Yeah,
can
no, I
vent if
think
we want.
yeah, yeah, no, I think that's sort of covered everything. That's sort of the updates from me. It's nothing too exciting beyond that. It's now just a case of, now that I've started adding some macros back, we'll just keep going down that path, keep
It
having fun
sounds
with
kind of
it.
boring. It sounds kind of boring. Auto water change. You got the KH director, or yeah, Alcatron. Is it the Alcatronic or the director?
The KH Guardian.
No, KH Guardian. Okay. Wow. See, I mean,
Yeah,
so what is a guy to do? I guess you're just gonna have to sit back and watch your tank and enjoy some time with the tank because you got some nice equipment there to help you out.
I mean that's sort of the biggest thing, I've always been atrocious with maintaining a water change schedule and testing, and so taking those out of my hands and just letting them happen automatically just means that I don't actually have to worry about that. I'm not stressing about it. I don't have to stress about making water. I'm not buying buckets of salt. I'm not mixing stuff up. I'm not making sure the RO is all good and all of that sort of stuff. So it removes that portion of the stressing and the worrying about the tank, and I can just focus on other things. Try dosing a bit of this, try dosing that. Look at doing some. Might look at doing some phyto. Raising baby Brian, as Alan's mentioned, means I can focus on some of those other little things where, I'm not having to dedicate that energy towards, just maintaining the water
Mhm.
change schedule.
Yeah, that's man. And the auto water change is a killer thing. And now, are you
Mm.
dumping down the drain, or are you going out in the yard, or like what's your strategy on where you're dumping?
Where the wastewater goes into the was it the laundry, into the laundry sink, basically into
Oh, I
one of the
gotcha.
drains on the laundry sink. Yeah, so it just
Yeah.
goes down there, which is where I'd pour the water, change water anyway. Would be into the laundry sink, so that's all going into that grey wastewater anyway. So
Yeah, yeah, it's all good. It gets recycled. But
yeah.
okay, so then so are your pumps the exact same pumps, and then are they working kind of like by the milliliter, or how's that working? Like
Uh,
so is
in
it
terms of
constantly just
dosing,
they're just constantly drawing like little bits in and dropping little bits out? Is that how it's working?
yeah. So I have the pumps set up so every hour on the basically on the hour it runs. The pumps run for I think it's 11 or 12 minutes, and they do. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Let's say they do the 300 mil of water change in that period. It might be more. I can't remember off the top of my head. Basically, what it ends up being is it ends up being 12 and a half, 15% water change per week, but that's spread out over every hour, and it's about 10 liters a day or something.
So you could, in theory, if you really wanted to control nitrates and phosphates, like outside of your protein skimmer, if you just weren't getting it done, you could intensify that, right? And just
Oh
and you,
yeah, absolutely. I could turn it up and have it do 100 liters or something a day. I can have it basically run constantly if I wanted to, so that there's always fresh water going. But I find that that 10 to 15% a week, that's sort of that sweet spot. You know, I mean it's maintaining all my levels. As I said, the ICP came back completely green, so there's no need for me to bump that up at this stage, and I'm not worried about the nutrients because they're sort of in reasonable spots. And
Mhm.
so we'll leave it at what it is currently, and as I add more acros and as things sort of start to pick up, and you get more of those uptakes occurring, then maybe I'll look at maybe I bump that up. I'll get the calcium reactor back online, and we'll see what happens.
Well, I can't wait to see that happening, man. That'll be that'll be a nice sight. But well, man, I'm going to go ahead and head out. But thanks again
Yeah,
for
yeah,
taking the time to join us. It's morning there, right? You're just getting going.
yeah. It's yep,
All right, enjoy the rest
11:30
of
in
your
the
day,
morning.
brother.
So I've got the whole day ahead of me still.
Enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to go do the opposite. It's time for me to go to bed.
Sounds good.
All right, Tom. Thanks again, man. I appreciate your
No,
time,
thank you.
brother. Good seeing you, man. Be
Yeah,
well.
you too. All right, see you later.
Later, brother.